Chapter 273. Once winter arrived, the Snowfield Brigade members in the base would eat bread the most. Occasionally, they would light a fire and put dried vegetables and leaves into the water that would never boil as a vitamin supplement. The training process of the Snowfield Brigade was more arduous than any other soldier in the Army, but their abilities were not something any soldier in the Army could compare to. Han Jing was a person who could endure hardship. He shared the bread and ham sausages that were only enough to fill his stomach without batting an eyelid. Yes, she's a very vigilant little girl. So, I'm very curious. What did you do to make her smile like the sun when she looked at you? Han Jing had a good impression of Yi Qian. With his status, he was used to seeing all kinds of people since he was young. He could tell whether they were real or fake at a glance. Take Yi Qian, for example. The first impression Han Jing had of her was that she was open and above board. Yes, she was open and above board. What he saw was not the exquisite beauty of her facial features, but the temperament of her movements. She was demure and graceful, without the weakness of a girl. She had a kind of open and above board, dark and elegant like an orchid character. But she really doesn't have any feelings for you. I told her that you rushed over and didn't see her. But in exchange, you only made her feel guilty. Other than that, there was nothing else. Also, you really have to thank me. If I hadn't hinted to her and used her guilt to write you a letter, brother, it's very likely that you wouldn't even have received this letter. As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan listened quietly. The smile on his thin lips was like the sun on a snowy mountain, bright and dazzling. It's good enough that you can make her feel a little guilty. Take out all the things you didn't take out. The letter here mentioned that you took a photo of her. No way, she told you that. Of course, this is the way I get along with her. You won't understand. Han Jing snorted and said a little gloomily, I finally became the magpie bridge between the cowherd and the weaver girl, but in the end, I didn't get any benefits at all. She even said that she wanted to use the photo in exchange for a few conditions. Who knew that a letter would sell me out? How exactly do you guys get along? Can you tell me more about it? What kind of way of getting along? From knowing each other, to fighting side by side. They were friends and comrades in arms. If one day they could even become lovers who fought side by side, that would be perfect. A few silhouettes came against the snowy light, all of them bringing with them a chilly wind as they walked into the wooden house. The two people who were talking just now immediately calmed down and stood at attention, welcoming their comrades who had returned from their mission. This time, they were not only training in the snowy highlands, but also carrying out an important mission. The situation is not good. Tomorrow, bring some rations and take a detour. G3 spread out the map. His slender fingers gently traced across the map as he said to Xia Jinyuan, Q King, you're very perceptive. You'll go with J5 tomorrow. As for Z7, you're new here, so you're not familiar with the terrain. Stay here and guard it. The company commander at the sentry post contacted me today, hoping that we can support them. You stay here and support the outpost. Q King, J5, and are going to look for the 3 missing brothers. Han Jing had no idea that he would encounter a missing brother as soon as he arrived. Listening to the piercing snowy wind, he said in a low voice, Okay, no problem on my side. I'll guard the back. I'll leave the front to you 4 brothers. Also, the military asked me to send a message to your sentry post. Chapter 274. He spoke in a low voice. One could only vaguely make out the words satellite, contact, and other sensitive military secrets. There was no doubt that the message he brought was very exciting news for the Shui Special Forces members who had been here for 4 months. This way, they would be able to contact the military at any time in the future. Next spring, the engineers will come over and finish building the equipment. We should be able to leave the mountain around July. Although Han Jing didn't participate in the previous missions, he still knew what the Snowfield Brigade was doing. This was definitely good news for the Sentinel Company stationed at high altitudes. G3 put away the map and patted Han Jing's shoulder. Go to the Sentinel Company tomorrow and tell them the good news. They will arrange the reception for the engineers. We will be responsible for keeping watch in the dark. We leave at 6 tomorrow morning. Go to bed early after eating and save your energy. Z7, there are still a few oxygen tanks. If you feel uncomfortable, call for help. We will take turns keeping watch and will wake you up in the middle. Han Jing had been at the military station for almost 2 months when the snow had sealed off the mountain. But now, they were at an altitude of more than 5,000 meters. G3 was worried that he would really fall asleep if he closed his eyes because of altitude sickness, so he told him that he would wake him up in the middle of the night. This wasn't an exaggeration. It was a real thing. Dinner was hard bread prepared by Han Jing, a ham sausage, and a packet of pickled vegetables for each person. As for fresh vegetables, fragrant rice, hot noodles, don't even think about it here. At least the 5 of them still had food to eat. As for the 3 brothers who had lost contact with them, they didn't know where they were hiding in the snow. However, they weren't too worried. This kind of thing happened often. Losing contact for 1 day was still a short period of time. Later on, they lost contact for 3 days at most. It was under such difficult conditions that, in the spring of the next year, a confidential report from the snowy highlands, translated by Han Jing alone, was sent back to the military headquarters. At the same time, a military layout map was also sent back to the military headquarters. This was the information that the 8 members of the Snowfield Brigade had exchanged for with their lives. They walked in the snowy mountains, accompanied by snow leopards. There wasn't even a small path. They climbed the steep mountains and the bottomless cliffs. They relied on their hands and legs to complete the mission given to them. By the time the news came back, spring was approaching in the north, and the cherry blossoms in the south had already withered. The days passed very quickly. It seemed that he still hadn't woken up from his spring sleepiness. He didn't know when the chirping of cicadas had started. After the general examination, Yi Qian did not stay at home like the other students to wait for the notice to arrive. Instead, he immediately returned to the village after the examination and joined the army for training the next day. Principal Chun and Uncle Jin didn't ask about Yi Qian's results, nor did they ask her if she did well in the exams. When she said that she would go to the army immediately, the 2 elders took her to the army without hesitation. Results and scores had never been the focus of his attention. 1.5 years into the 4-year plan, and Yi Qian's training was getting more and more arduous. Yi Qian was standing alone under the scorching sun with camouflage branches and leaves covering his head. He had a Barrett M82A1 anti-material sniper rifle propped up. He had already been training for a full 6 hours. Long-range sniping missions often require the sniper to run long distances without eating, drinking, or sleeping. Good hearing and vision were the basics, and at the same time, they also needed to have extremely high endurance. Chapter 275. For example, she wouldn't feel thirsty because of the sun, wouldn't move because of frequent urination, and wouldn't expose herself because of insects. Fragrance came from the bitter cold. Theory learning, shooting training, skill training, and stealth training were carried out at the same time. Yi Qian had already completed shooting at stationary targets in different positions within different shooting ranges. Now, she was entering the dynamic shooting training. The so-called dynamic shooting training was the most difficult training. It required her to shoot at targets that appeared and disappeared at a certain distance within a set period of time. The passing standard was a distance of 400 meters, and the required time was 4 seconds. After 6 hours of hiding, Yi Qian was waiting for a mouse to appear. Finally, when the wind blew, a mouse suddenly appeared in the crosshair scope. In that second, Yi Qian's breathing tightened, and with a bang, she fired her first shot. This was also her first shot in the dynamic shooting training. As the mouse squeaked into the forest, Yi Qian knew she had failed this shot. Her willow leaf-like eyebrows furrowed slightly, and her increasingly beautiful facial features revealed a rare coldness of a girl. Holding a sniper rifle that could destroy a car's engine with a single bullet, and could also quickly penetrate brick walls and cement, she stood there and let herself be criticized. Your body's functions haven't been relaxed, and the preparation before firing was too tense. Also, 6 hours of not moving has already made you feel tired, causing errors in your vision, straight line, and visual image, resulting in errors in your judgment of the bullet's trajectory. Principal Chin's voice was as cold as a bullet, without a trace of warmth. His eyes also didn't have the usual kindness. This isn't the original gun, but Yi Qian, you have to get used to any sniper rifle. Let every gun be your old partner, and every bullet in every gun can be close to your breath. Taking the sniper rifle from Yi Qian's hands, Yi Qian aimed at the target, calculated the wind speed, calculated, and pulled the trigger. Bang! After less than a minute, Yi Qian smelled the faint scent of blood. The mouse that had clearly escaped was finally shot by a sniper rifle. This was the standard of a world-class sniper. He didn't need to prepare for too long. He only needed one target, and he could complete the mission. This was also Yi Qian's goal. To surpass Principal Chun, she had to stand even higher. Yi Qian gasped softly. This was the first time Principal Chun, the first time he personally held a gun in front of her. It was so sudden that she didn't even have time to react before the world-class sniper's demonstration ended. Really amazing. Her face was full of admiration, and Principal Chun had a serious expression, so he lightly tapped her head with the butt of his rifle. Little girl, train hard. 2 weeks, Yi Qian, the highlands, mountains, deserts. Mississippi. Mississippi Jian, you have to be prepared. The toughest days, Mississippi. Every place had different environments, training requirements, and shooting conditions. The external environment's temperature, altitude, wind speed, atmospheric visibility, lighting conditions, and other natural conditions would all affect the shooter's aim and the trajectory of the bullet. Principal Chun wanted Yi Qian to be able to hit the target no matter what the environment was. Although the environment could affect the accuracy of a shot, she had to use her excellent skills to eliminate the environmental factors, and she would be able to complete the mission perfectly. Chapter 276. There is only one factor that could not be controlled, and that was luck. This was the only thing that a sniper could not control. But what was luck? Luck was built on your daily training and your sniping skills. So, in Principal Chin's words, if you failed, don't blame it on bad luck. It was because you were not good enough. Bad luck was just an excuse. The next 2 weeks of dynamic training were even more arduous than before. Principal Chun no longer stood beside Yi Qian to guide her on what to do. Instead, he personally took the role of the enemy's sniper and confronted Yi Qian. Later on, Yi Qian recalled the training she had gone through in the past. She felt that this period of training was the most arduous and difficult. That was because she was facing a world-class sniper, not an ordinary sniper. On the first day, Yi Qian could not even find where Principal Chun was in disguise. He was clearly less than 100 meters away from her, but she did not know where Principal Chun was until she was hit by a blank bullet. Natural camouflage and artificial camouflage must be combined perfectly. Spring as the trees, summer as the shrubs, autumn as the dead leaves, and winter as the snow. This is the perfect natural camouflage. Headmaster Chun, who was wearing a camouflage suit, sat cross-legged. The sun was so hot that the skin on his lips peeled off. There was no water to drink, and there was no wind. He just sat there and gave advice to Yi Qian. Your sense of smell is very sensitive, so I deliberately rolled in the mud to cover up the smell on my body. This is also a way of disguise. Girl, remember this. Camouflage is a basic skill that a sniper must master. The quality of the camouflage skill determines whether a sniper can successfully complete the mission. This was what Principal Chun had learned from his own personal experience. He was so strict that it was almost harsh when it came to training Yi Qian. Yi Qian entered the true hellish training and approached the level of a world-class sniper. Her perception was extremely good. Even though she was sometimes killed by Principal Chun, she had only been using guns for a little more than a year. She was not like Principal Chun, who was a world-class sniper with decades of experience. 1 month after the summer vacation, Principal Chun left Shuku village with Yi Qian. No one knew where they went. Not even Uncle General the school's acceptance letters began to be sent out. When Yi Qian, Yi Ying, Zhang Wenli, and the other third-year student from the same village received their acceptance letters, there were only 15 days left until the end of the summer vacation. Village Chief Zhang Difu took the 6 notices from the postman, counted them, and said uncertainly, "There are 11 children in the village who are in junior high school. These 6 notices, all of them. Village Chief, there will be a notice for those who are admitted to high school. Even if there are 20 people in Shuku village who are in junior high school, if only 6 of them are admitted, there will only be 6 notices." The postman laughed. Every year at this time, when the acceptance letters for high school and university were sent out, the villagers would ask about it. Zhang Difu sighed and nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Sigh. Only 6 of them are admitted to high school. This year, none of them are admitted to university. Sigh, it's been hard on you. Come in and have a cup of tea before you leave. Village Chief, has my Yingying's acceptance letter arrived? I just saw the postman coming. Sun Dongqing's voice floated in from the yard. It was full of energy, as if she was afraid that no one would know that the postman had come. The postman, who was about to say something, got on his green bicycle when he heard the voice. He waved at Zhang Difu and said with a smile, "I won't be drinking water. I still have to go to other villages to deliver the acceptance letters. You should treat the mayor's wife well." Chapter 277. The postman was from the town, so he knew a lot about the mayor's wife. Sun Dongqing wasn't the only one who came to get the notice. Everyone who had a child in their family came. The adults were more eager to get the notice than the children. Ying was wearing a floral dress. She hadn't been out in the sun for the whole summer, so her skin was much fairer than before. She wasn't as flamboyant as before. She stood beside Sun Dongqing and looked very well behaved. Everyone in the village knew about the incident on the 3rd day of school last year. Ying didn't come back during the winter break. She stayed in the provincial capital to study English. Now that a year had passed, the villagers didn't say anything. Ying had also kept a low profile, so the villagers forgot about it. Zhang Difu took out Yi Ying's notice and handed it over. "This is for your family." He then handed over the other 4 notices. Come. These are for your families. The rest go away." 11 children and 6 notices. Naturally, those who didn't get in. "Oh, Ying, she's from the provincial first high school. She's really from the provincial first high school. I knew it. My Ying will definitely get into the provincial first high school." Sun Dongqing looked at the school on the notice and smiled. She was not only proud, but also disdainful. She glanced at the other villagers who didn't get the notice and comforted them with a fake smile. "It's okay. Studying isn't the only way out for this child. There are 360 professions. Every profession has its own master. It's good that she can work to earn money." It was easy for her to say that. If she really wanted her child to work, she wouldn't have come here to get the notice. No one argued with her. They had no choice. She was the mayor's wife. Go away. We're all from the same village. Can you stop arguing?" Zhang Difu looked at the smug Sun Dongqing and sighed in his heart. Jifan's wife was looking down on people more and more. Sun Dongqing looked at him with disdain and said coldly, "I'm just telling the truth. You need talent to study. My Ying was born to study. How can she be compared to them?" She then turned to the other 4 villagers who got the notice. "Look, which school did you get into?" Uncle Jin came in just in time to hear this. He walked over with a gloomy face. "Difu, give me Miss Jian's notice." As soon as the old man spoke, Sun Dongqing and her mother both stiffened. Zhang Difu smiled in his heart and said respectfully, "I was just about to deliver it to you. Is Miss Jian not back yet?" He said he would be back in 10 days. Uncle Jin took the notice and looked at the school on it. He smiled. Ying glanced at him and greeted politely, "Grandpa Jin, yes, I'll do better if I get into the provincial first high school." It didn't mean to study hard, but to learn well. The order of the words was slightly different, but the meaning was completely different. One simply meant to study hard, while the other meant to learn how to be a good person. Uncle Jin didn't like adults, but for a child, no matter how bad his character was, he wouldn't mind. Even someone as smart as Yi Ying could tell. She lowered her eyes slightly to hide the coldness in her eyes and said obediently, "You're right. It wasn't easy for me to get into a good school. I have to study hard. Otherwise, I won't be able to get into a university. My Ying is so sensible." "Uncle Jin, how did the little girl do?" She had originally thought that she must be amazing since she had won an international award, and the first place in the cohort. But in the end, she didn't come back with any good results. Chapter 278. Sun Dongqing waved the letter in her hand and smiled like a flower blooming on her face. Our Yingying's grades are still the best. She got into the provincial number 1 high school without a hitch. Mom, don't say that. Ying seemed unhappy. She took the letter from her and stuffed it back into the envelope. She said to Uncle Jin, Grandpa Jin, my mom's words are unpleasant. Actually, she's quite concerned about whether my sister got into school or not. Uncle Jin glanced at Ying, who thought she was smart but didn't have any sense of responsibility. He said calmly, it's not bad. Number 1 high school in the city. It's as expected. Number 1 middle school isn't bad either. Although it's not as good as the provincial number 1 high school, with my sister's intelligence, it's the same no matter where she goes. Ying knew that she was relieved. She really didn't want to be in the same school as Yi Qian. There was no other reason. Yi Qian knew too much about her. If he told others in high school, she would have to live like she did in high school. She would have to live a repressed life. Hearing this, Sun Dongqing held back her pride and pretended to be concerned. She sighed and said, as long as she gets in, number 1 middle school will be number 1 middle school. She'll just suffer a little when she gets into university. This is great. I can finally answer to my sister. It wasn't strange that Sun Dongqing could shamelessly take credit for herself. Another boy from the village got into the same school as Yi Qian. When he heard that Yi Qian was in the same school as him, he was very happy. He said, that's great. We'll have a companion when we come back to the village in the future. We won't be afraid when we come back together. Of course, my poor Yingying. She has to stay in school for 3 years in high school. No matter what others said, Sun Dongqing would naturally turn the topic to her own daughter and praise her a few more times. A figure stood at the entrance of the courtyard and listened quietly for a while. When he saw that the people in the courtyard were about to leave, he lowered his head and looked at the high school study materials in his hands. He turned around and left without disturbing the people in the courtyard. Ying turned around nimbly. She seemed to have seen a familiar figure flash past the entrance of the courtyard. Her eyes lit up slightly as she stopped in her tracks. She wondered if she had seen wrongly. He only stopped for a moment before he quickly chased after her. There was no one outside. Only the sound of a bicycle passing by could be heard. After delivering the package, the postman asked the boy sitting behind him with a smile, didn't you just enter the village to look for your classmate? Didn't you find it? Yes, he's not at home. Gao Yang, who should have gone to Australia a long time ago, was already a big boy. Although his expression was cold, he still looked very educated. Uncle, you can just drop me off in the car in front. Someone is waiting for me in the car. Heh, he already has a car at such a young age. When the postman saw the license plate of the car, he couldn't help but take a few more glances. This car must be expensive. It's long and big, and there's even a leopard on it. Tiger? It was an indiscernible symbol. Gao Yang, who needed to go to Australia in 3 days, came with a pile of high school study materials. When he heard from Uncle Jin that Yi Qian would be back in about 10 days, he knew he wouldn't be able to see Yi Qian this time. His eyes were filled with deep disappointment as he looked out of the car window. His indifferent expression made the driver not dare to ask more questions. Gao Yang, who left with regrets, boarded the plane to the capital. Perhaps he would settle down in Australia, or perhaps he would return to China after he finished his studies. But he knew in his heart that he would never see that girl again. She was so determined that she would give up the chance of survival to others in the face of danger. She would be like a cinnabar mole, forever fresh in his heart. Chapter 279. When Yi Qian received the notice, it was the day before Gao Yang left for Australia. To him, she was the cinnabar mole in his heart, but to Yi Qian, they were just classmates, not even friends. Ying was the only one in the village who knew that Gao Yang had visited. She even called him the day before he left. Ying wanted to salvage her image, but Gao Yang still treated her coldly. At this time, Ying realized that not everyone could forgive her mistakes. Even Gao Yang, who used to like her a lot, would not let himself get to know her again just because she lowered herself and took the initiative to contact him. After hanging up the phone, Ying threw all the clothes in her wardrobe onto the floor and the bed as if she had gone crazy. She no longer screamed or roared like before. Instead, she vented her anger in silence. Yi Qian, Yi Qian. Every time she threw a piece of clothing, she hated Yi Qian. It was as if she treated the clothes as Yi Qian for her to vent her anger on. Every time she went crazy, she seemed to become gentler. In addition, Yi Jifan did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to send her to the province to participate in all kinds of training. This made her temperament even more refined. Yi Ying, who was about to become a high school freshman, became slender and elegant. She gave off a refreshing feeling like a lotus flower. She constantly pretended to be a noble person in the south, while Yi Qian underwent dangerous and arduous training in the north. Yi Qian never knew that a person's potential was so limitless. He also did not know that after this summer vacation, her willpower had been tempered to be as strong as steel. From the south to the north, crossing more than half of the motherland, Yi Jin came to this plateau where there were herds of wild horses. Less than 10 days after coming here, Yi Jin felt so tired that she felt like she had shed a layer of skin. She was tired both physically and mentally. After climbing into the herdsman's carriage, Yi Qian collapsed on the thick grass. He was so tired that he could not even lift a finger. Principal Chun chatted happily with the herdsman. He spoke Tibetan very fluently, as if he had returned to his hometown. The moment he entered the Tibetan area, he was completely different from before. It was as if he was a native Tibetan. Yi Qian did not understand this language, which sounded like a paradise to him. He only knew that he wanted to rest, but his cerebral cortex was exceptionally excited. That was because in today's confrontation, her shooting speed was faster than Principal Chin's by about 2 seconds, and she hit the target. This was the first round of dynamic training, and he was faster than Principal Chun. No matter how tired he was still excited. In July, the Tibetan area was as beautiful as a painting. During the day, the green grass, snow mountains, and blue sky were connected. At night, the sky was full of stars. Every star was shining with the brightest light, like a diamond that could be picked at any time. When the sky gradually darkened, the herdsmen began to sing. Their deep voices were powerful and high-spirited. Even if they did not understand the meaning of the simple melody, they could feel the passion for life and hear their happiness. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Yi Qian and Principal Chun disassembled their 2 sniper rifles and put them in their bags after every training session. They only carried a pistol with 12 bullets. From the south to the north, not a single bullet had been fired. "Miss Jian, we can sleep in the tent tonight." In front of them, Principal Chun, who was chatting with the herdsman until he seemed to have forgotten about Yi Qian, turned his head and said to her, "You are sleeping with Uncle Xija's daughter, Yang Jin. You are about the same age, so you can communicate." Chapter 280. Yi Jian, who was about to fall asleep due to the rocking of the carriage, heard the conversation in a daze and laughed. That would only work if there is no language barrier. "I don't understand Tibetan at all. I'm afraid it will be difficult to communicate." She didn't understand Tibetan, and the people in the Tibetan area, especially the Tibetans who were around 30 years old, couldn't understand them either. It was better when they were outside, but now that they were in the heart of the Tibetan area, Mandarin was like a foreign language to the Tibetans. They had to rely on Principal Chun to communicate with them. "We will stay here for about 7 days. Girl Jian, you have to remember my wolf survival rule. As long as you have a wild nature and an enterprising spirit, there is nothing you can't do." When Principal Chun came here, the border between the 2 countries was at its most unstable. It was also the time when the lives of the Tibetans were at its most turbulent. At that time, the first requirement of the soldiers sent by the army was that they must learn Tibetan within a month. Learning Tibetan within a month, in the eyes of ordinary people, was something that was simply impossible. The Han people stayed in the Tibetan area for a year and still couldn't learn it. But for the soldiers, there was no task that couldn't be completed. They had to learn it within a month if they were given an order. If they couldn't learn it, they would be punished by military law. Principal Chun learned it within a month, and Yi Qian had been in the Tibetan area for more than 10 days. She would leave in another 10 days. Although he didn't ask her to learn it, since Yi Qian mentioned the communication barrier, how to solve it was up to Yi Qian. The wool survival rule. First, you have to know what you need. Under the premise of what you need to get, you have to know if you need to have something. Sharpen your fangs, sharp claws, and develop excellent survival skills and a strong physique. These are the prerequisites for what you need. You need to possess them. Language communication is also a survival skill. Since you found it troublesome, then if you want to communicate with the Tibetans without any barriers, you have to learn Tibetan and clear the barrier. Yi Qian immediately understood. She had a ready-made teacher beside her, but she didn't think of it. My home is right in front. There's warm milk, fragrant beef jerky, and endless mutton. Eat whatever you want. The herdsman was about the same age as Principal Chun, but he looked more than 10 years older than Principal Chun. This had a lot to do with the local environment. Principal Chun laughed and replied, "And the strongest liquor." This sentence ignited the passion of the herdsman, because this was the first time he met a Han Chinese who said that he wanted to drink the strongest wine in the no man's land. It must be known that the greatest danger to the Han people living in the plains was altitude sickness, and drinking alcohol was absolutely forbidden. The laughter in the carriage never stopped. It was blown far away by the night wind. The temperature in July was neither hot nor cold in the no man's land, but it was also the rainy season. There would be occasional showers during the day and at night as well. The rain came at the drop of a hat. One second it was a starry sky, and the next it was a torrential downpour. The Tibetans were already used to it, but Yi Qian was still not used to it even after so many days. The rain beat against the tent, and the temperature dropped sharply. Yi Qian put on thick Tibetan clothing, and the Han girl became a Tibetan girl. Chapter 281. Although she had been basking in the sun for more than 10 days, her skin, which was naturally resistant to tanning, was as white as a peach blossom petal. Dressed in a gorgeous Kuba costume, she was so beautiful that Yang Jin's eyes widened. She said the same words several times in a row, which made Principal Chun laugh out loud. "Girl," Yang Jin said, that you are a goddess who came down from Tian Shan Mountain. You are very beautiful. How could she not be beautiful? She didn't need to draw on her dark, willow-like eyebrows. Her lips were vermilion, her eyes were like stars, and her teeth were like cinnabar shells. Her palm-sized face had beautiful facial features. She was a natural beauty that didn't need any makeup. However, when she smiled, she was as gorgeous as a peony blossoming. She was beautiful without being seductive. In the Kuba costume, Yi Qian was indeed much more beautiful than usual. What made people unable to take their eyes off her was her temperament. She stood upright with a valiant aura that made people feel at ease. However, she also had the gentle beauty of a girl. She was both strong and soft. It was hard to tell whether she was a man or a woman. Yang Jin smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. She took Yi Qian's hand and made her sit on a natural wool mat. The nimble girl began to braid Yi Qian's hair. She generously took out a Tibetan headdress and put it on Yi Qian. Yi Qian had once heard a piece of news saying that the things that the Tibetans wore on their heads were all historical and could not be measured by money. When she saw Yang Jin holding an extremely beautiful agate headdress, Yi Qian quickly pointed to a headdress made of leather, indicating that she preferred this one. Yang Jin pursed her lips and smiled. She replaced the agate headdress with leather. On the other side, Principal Chun, who was drinking Highland barley wine, saw this and secretly gave Yi Qian a thumbs up. She was quite knowledgeable. She knew that it was an expensive headdress and only chose a leather headdress. After the rain, the entire night sky became clearer after being washed by the water. The stars appeared again, allowing the few people who were taking shelter from the rain to walk out from under the rocks. They wiped away the rainwater that splashed on their faces, looked up at the starry sky, and started walking again. "Looks like it's going to be difficult to find them tonight," Xia Jinyuan said coldly. Under the night sky, his posture was like a sword that had been unsheathed, bringing with it a sense of dominance. Z7. Check the coordinates. Han Jing, codenamed Z7, took out a military compass. After looking at it, He calculated his position and quickly found their exact location on the military map. He spread the map on his big map, turned on the headlight on his helmet, and said in a low voice, "The east side is the river. We can't go that way. It's a dead end. The south side is our military depot. We can't go there either. There's only this way north. There's a small village of nomads. If I were this group of people, I would choose to go to the village at night. There are still 20 kilometers to go. The journey will take about 3 to 4 hours. These guys had good stamina, so they would arrive in about 3 hours. No man's land. This was the only place to stay. Also, this area is where the snow wolves are active. Be careful." J5 took off his boots and poured out the water. He smiled and said, "We can't enter the village after them. We have to enter the village before them." Z7, see if there's a shortcut we can take. We have to take a shortcut. No one objected to his suggestion, but there was a big problem. The shortcut after entering the no man's land was not as simple as taking a shortcut on the plains. The no man's land was full of unknowns at night. There were dangers that you couldn't see. The mountains you saw during the day were magnificent, but at night they gave you fear, the fear of approaching death. Chapter 282. If they took a shortcut, they might get lost, or they might walk into a dangerous area with falling rocks. These were all things that were very likely to happen. Han Jing looked at the map carefully again and said, "Let's take the main road. We can't take a shortcut. Brothers, it's better to be careful. We'd rather speed up and stop them than take a shortcut." He was a living map. He could remember all the maps sent back by the satellite. If there were any discrepancies, he could combine it with the military map and it would be almost accurate. But even so, they couldn't take a shortcut. The unknown in the dark was impossible to defend against. Fighting in the cold areas of the highlands emphasized on light weapons to reduce the burden of weapons on the soldiers. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, they carried carbon fiber cases, stainless steel barrels, and carbon rifles with an empty weight of less than 1.78 kilograms. G3 slung the rifle over his shoulder and said in a hoarse voice, "Stop wasting time. They must have run away by now." He turned around and looked at K7. "Can you still hold on? If you can't, let J5 stay with you. The 3 of US will chase after them." K7 was injured and was not suitable for long-distance tracking. However, the situation of the people chasing this time was special. K7 was the most proficient in Tibetan among the 5 of them. With him around, communication was not a problem. "Let's go. If we can't, I'll rest." K7 waved his hand. In the dark, there seemed to be something burning in his eyes. A total of 7 people. They injured 6 of the border guards and killed 4 of them. There must be a master among them. This was also the reason why the Snowfield Brigade was sent out. To be able to kill 4 soldiers and injure 6 of them. This was not something a normal person could do. The country had always been strict with the border guards training. First, it was to protect the border. Second, it was to survive, not to sacrifice. The 20-kilometer Highland Road was much more difficult than the plains. No man's land was called the main road, but sharp rocks were everywhere. If the military boots walked too fast, not only would they cut through the leather, but they would also cut their feet until they bled. After chasing for about 5 kilometers, they found a few empty bullets and a few drops of blood on the side of a rock. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand, and the 4 of them stood guard in front and behind them. He squatted down and bent down on one knee to pick up the empty bullets. He took off his gloves and gently wiped the blood stains with his fingers. North Korea's .556 caliber bullet is the same as the one found at the border station. When someone was injured, they pried open the bullet and took out the gunpowder inside to stop bleeding and reduce inflammation. They don't have any common medical supplies. Picking up the bullet in his hand, Xia Jinyuan's eyes were as sharp and cold as an eagle circling in the sky. "You won't be able to walk fast with an injured person. Speed up. Tell me if K7 feels uncomfortable." G3 put away his carbon rifle and pointed it down. He said sternly, "There's enough time to catch up. Z7, you accompany K7. Xia Jinyuan and J5 nodded lightly. Their military boots stepped on the gravel. Their tall and slender figures were as strong as snow leopards in the highlands. They chased after the murderer for thousands of miles with a murderous aura. The soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade were not soldiers from the military station. They had killed people before. When they moved, they had a murderous aura that could sometimes make wolves retreat. K7 was injured in his calf. The stitches had just been removed, so it was not suitable for him to chase after the murderer for thousands of miles. But for the murderer and to avenge his fallen comrades, he had to persevere no matter how painful it was. Chapter 283. The wind blew from the edge of the snowy mountain. There was a faint smell of blood in the wind that had the smell of snow, which made the 5 people chasing after the culprit look cold. They were less than 10 miles away from the village. If there was a strong smell of blood, it meant that either something had happened to the culprit or something had happened to the herder. The 5 of them were more inclined towards the latter. Alert! K7, bring up the rear. J5, cover. Xia Jinyuan's cold voice came from the headset. He graduated from the combat command faculty and was more professional than G3. In the past year or so, he could be said to be the team leader of the Snowfield Brigade. His sensitivity to danger, his ability to command battles, and his ability to deploy troops perfectly fused his expertise with practice. Not only did he allow this group of soldiers to complete their own missions, but he also allowed the military to assign them to some confidential military projects in the depths of the snowy mountains. The culprit this time was a group of mercenaries with bad intentions. They had shot and killed the sentinels. It was normal for mercenaries to kill civilians. Similar incidents happened all over the world. Following the smell of blood, they saw the body of a herder lying quietly by the sharp rocks. His Tibetan uniform had been taken away, as well as his accessories. Mercenaries had always been good at anti-reconnaissance. Not only did they take off the herder's clothes, they also took his hat, shoes, waist knife, and flint scythe. Disguising as a Tibetan, we can definitely enter the village. Xia Jinyuan opened his military backpack, took out a medical bandage, and gently placed it on the herder's face. They couldn't bring him back to the village. They could only come back after they dealt with the mercenaries. On the other side, K7 found a few drops of blood with some white powder floating on them. He used a military dagger to pick up some of the powder and rubbed it with his hand. Sterilized crystal sulfonamide. Check if the herder has any injuries. Sterilized crystal sulfonamide was commonly known as anti-inflammatory powder. It was a prescription drug used to prevent wound infections. If mercenaries used gunpowder from bullets to treat wounds, then it was very likely that the anti-inflammatory powder came from the herder. After checking that the herdsmen were not injured, they did not delay for too long. 2 minutes later, they started to walk again. On the road, they saw the grass that had been thrown on both sides of the road, as well as the wheels on the ground. Robbing the carriages, killing the herdsmen, taking away the anti-inflammatory powder that the herdsmen brought home, and then throwing away the herdsmen's pasture to settle the wounded. From this, it could be inferred that the wounded had a certain status, and the mercenaries could not abandon the wounded. At midnight, there was no light in the Tibetan village. Occasionally, the low whines of the Tibetan mastiffs could be heard. They were protecting the safety of the village. Yi Qian was awakened by the Tibetan mastiff's howls. Because of Hei Jie, Yi Qian could also tell what the Tibetan mastiff's howls were trying to convey. Now, what they heard was a somewhat violent and anxious warning that a stranger had entered the village. Yang Jin was sleeping soundly. Yi Qian, who was sleeping outside, groped in the dark and picked up the Tibetan girl's clothes that Yang Jin had given her. She put on her shoes, picked up her gun, and quietly walked out of the tent. The village was not big, and it was a nomadic village. Most of the tents were at a certain distance from each other. Yi Qian could tell where the Tibetan mastiff's howls were coming from. She held her gun tightly and the dagger that Yang Jin had given her in her hand. The sound came from the front, which was equivalent to the tents at the entrance of the village. She could faintly hear the angry voice of a woman. Principal Chun had said that Tibetan families were very united and friendly. They rarely quarreled. However, when she heard the angry voice now, she felt a little scared. Domestic violence? No, if it was domestic violence, the Tibetan Mastiff would not roar at strangers. Wait, wait. The Tibetan Mastiff that had been howling just now was now silent. Chapter 284. When Yi Qian realized that a stranger who might harm the herdsman had entered the village, she suddenly heard a strange sound coming from her left. Her eyes turned cold, and she rolled onto the wet grass to avoid the hand that reached out from behind her. Her reaction scared the J5. This Tibetan girl was too agile. Come out. Yi Qian rolled onto the grass and lay down on the ground below the money pile. Her eyes were cold as she shouted in Tibetan, "Who is it?" The first sentence was instinctively spoken in Mandarin, and the second sentence was Tibetan that she learned from Yang Jin. When her voice floated out, the 5 people hiding in the darkness were stunned. This voice, it sounded familiar. Han Zheng made a hush sound with his mouth and said to Xia Jinyuan, "Don't you find it familiar? Doesn't it sound like your little fox's voice? Did I hear wrongly? It does sound like her." After a year, her voice was clearer and more imposing, but he wasn't sure. Wasn't Yi Qian in Fujian town? How could she have come here? Thinking about it, it didn't seem possible. I'm not sure. Xia Jinyuan wasn't sure either. He gestured to the 5 people, and they immediately surrounded the money pile. No matter who it was, as long as she was a citizen, they had to ensure her safety. Yi Qian could already feel that someone was surrounding her, and there was a faint smell of blood on them. There was a slope in front of her, and below her was the problematic tent. There were people surrounding her on both sides, so she could only walk on top of the money pile. But when she thought of the religious culture of the Tibetan area, Yi Qian gritted her teeth and decided to rush down the problematic tent. If the 5 members of the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces let a 15-year-old girl like Yi Qian escape, the 5 of them would doubt if they were qualified to be Special Forces soldiers. Xia Jinyuan was the first to make a move. When he saw a slender figure appear, he immediately used his own body to pounce on Yi Qian and grabbed one of Yi Qian's ankles with both hands. With a forceful trip, Yi Qian, who had rushed out, also fell to the ground. He didn't fall straight down. Instead, he bent his arms and fell on the wet grass in an extremely professional posture. Yi Qian grabbed his right foot. As he fell, his left foot kicked down. After failing to kick off, he placed both hands on the ground and rotated his body in a scissor kick style, facing the starry sky in an attempt to counterattack. However, Yi Qian was also shocked by the other party's reaction. She moved quickly, but the other party was even faster. Before she could stand up, her ankle was grabbed again. From crawling to protecting the fall, to kicking, and then to using the scissor kick to turn over, the series of movements were not only smooth, but the professional fierceness revealed made the 5 people tremble in fear. Where did this Tibetan girl learn? Xia Jinyuan's shoulder was kicked by Yi Qian. She used a lot of force, and his entire shoulder was in so much pain that his muscles twitched. When Z7 and J5 saw this, they quickly joined the battle and attacked together. They held down Yi Qian's left and right shoulders. Q King suppressed this little snow wolf. Damn, Tibetan girls are indeed hotter than us Han girls. This smell, it's strong. It's hot enough. K7, who was in charge of security, quickly said in Tibetan, Boma, we're not bad people. We're soldiers from the military station. More than a year had passed. Yi Qian was no longer the thin and weak girl from last year. After 2 summers and 1 winter break, under Principal Chin's hellish training, her physical strength and combat skills had improved by leaps and bounds. Even if her shoulders were held down by 2 people, as long as her legs could move, she could still struggle. Chapter 285. When she realized that it was Han Zheng's voice, she froze for a second. It was at this moment that Xia Jinyuan, who was holding onto her ankle, had a chance to retaliate. He muttered, "Excuse me," before he pressed himself against Yi Qian's body and covered her mouth with his hand. Yi Qian was speechless. You guys have to let her say something. In the eyes of the 5 members of the Snowfield Brigade, they had finally subdued this Tibetan girl who was as fierce as a wild beast. After being pressed down and covered, Yi Qian saw two black figures wearing combat helmets appear in front of him. They were dressed in familiar clothes and had a familiar aura, and the person on top of him was a familiar person. With his mouth covered, Yi Qian could only mutter, which meant, "Xia Jinyuan, let go of me." When Yi Qian realized who was on top of him, Xia Jinyuan naturally realized as well. At this moment, Xia Jinyuan wanted to let go, but he couldn't bear to do so. She was so close. Her faint fragrance was like a flower petal gently brushing past the tip of his nose, tugging at his heartstrings and touching his nerves. At this moment, he only wanted to hold on tightly to her fragrance. How could he bear to let go so quickly? Furthermore, this was the second time he was pressing the little fox under his body. As for the feeling, he had to admit that this little fellow had developed quite well after not seeing her for a year. Especially the little ball on her chest. He could feel her softness even though he was wearing a combat uniform and she was wearing crocodile. Little fox, this is such a big surprise. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows slightly. Under the starry sky, there was a glimmer in his dark eyes. It was as if stars had fallen into his pupils, shining brightly. He laughed softly and said, "The way we met was also very special. It took 5 of us to deal with you alone. Girl, you have hurt our self-esteem a little." As soon as he spoke, even K7, who was on high alert, wanted to look over. Little fox? Who? Han Jing shivered inwardly. Damn, it's so mushy. Little fox? Why don't you call her little girlfriend? Q King, let me interrupt you. Can't you see that we're all here? Can't you get up first? You're always pressing down on a little girl. Can't you have some self-awareness? You may not be ashamed, but the little girl is. A fine maiden like her is being held down by a big man like you. You're taking all the advantages. Then he said, "Oh my God, why didn't you just say a few words of Mandarin earlier?" Han Jing let out a long sigh and loosened his grip on Yi Qian's shoulder. "Young lady, why are you out here in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? I heard that the Tibetan Mastiff's roar was strange, so I came out to take a look," Yi Qian said softly, a little embarrassed. He then asked Xia Jinyuan, "Does your shoulder hurt? I kicked you really hard just now. Lift your shoulder and see if your bones are hurt." She was naturally annoyed. How could she have known that they would be the ones entering the village? After all, that's not right. They were still here. So who was the person in the tent? It couldn't be one of their people. However, it was indeed a pleasant surprise to be able to meet him here. J5 also realized what was going on. He let go of his hand and said slowly, "Oh, little fox. No, it should be a little snow wolf. It's very fierce. It'll take the 3 of us to take it down." Chapter 286. The 3 of them took turns. Bah! Yi Qian's eyes widened. This was also a person with a loose tongue. He really had the urge to tape their mouths shut, but it was the truth. J5 and Han Jing both had loose tongues. Therefore, when he and Han Jing were in the army, the rest of the brothers would avoid them. Han Jing released his grip and immediately went on alert with K7. When he heard Yi Qian quietly ask if he hurt Xia Jinyuan, he felt a lump of blood in his throat. "Young lady, you're still concerned about whether he hurts or not. Why don't you care about yourself?" Damn, why was there a sour taste in his mouth? It had been more than a year since anyone cared about him. 2 people with sharp tongues were no match for Xia Jinyuan. He had always been thick-skinned in front of Yi Qian. Not only did he not stand up, he even purposely rubbed his hand over Yi Qian's mouth. He chuckled softly and said, "What's wrong? Are you jealous? Keep your thoughts to yourself." The little fox hasn't retracted her sharp claws and teeth. "I'm afraid that if I let go, she'll bite you again. I was bitten last time. You were bitten last time?" Even someone as calm as G3 blinked. It had been at least a year since he was last bitten. Beast. A year ago, the young lady was even smaller. Originally, Yi Qian didn't have any other thoughts. She hadn't seen this dangerous and elegant man for more than a year. To her, he was like a stranger again. In addition, the situation just now was different. He pressed on top of her to subdue her. So how could she have any thoughts? But now that they said that, Yi Qian couldn't help but blush. Before she could calm down, her face was rubbed with his thumb. Yi Qian felt her brain explode. With so many people looking at her, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole in the ground. Xia Jinyuan, other people might not be able to see what you're doing, but she knows. Yi Qian was afraid that he would be misunderstood and shocked by Yi Qian's actions, so he couldn't help but struggle. If it doesn't hurt, then get up quickly. Didn't you hear what they said? She twisted her body slightly. Xia Jinyuan pressed his legs tightly against Yi Qian's legs and pretended not to hear her. He said with a faint smile, "Little fox, don't move." Then he said to Han Jing and J5 who were closest to him, "She's not your little fox, she's my little fox. You guys, you can just call her by her name. Be polite, don't call her as if you're all very familiar with her. The only person she knows is me. Do you understand?" Yi Qian felt his face heat up even more. He glared at her and gritted his teeth. "Get up quickly. You're so heavy. What was his little fox? When did she become a fox? Hurry up, they're all watching." If he didn't get up now, the little fox would be angry. How sad. He had missed her for more than a year. The surprise of seeing her so unexpectedly made him feel as if flowers had bloomed in spring. Words could not express his feelings at this moment. Unfortunately, it was obvious that his little fox didn't think about him at all. Major Xia, who was thinking about her, used his extremely slow body movements to express how reluctant he was to get up. Even K7, who had a cold personality, was looking at them with interest. TSK, TSK, TSK. When Xia Jinyuan acted like a rascal, he really had the urge to kick him. Chapter 287. But it didn't work. His title as the all-round Soldier King wasn't just for show. He was flirting with the girl, but his gaze was like a radar, not missing a single corner. As expected, only an all-round Soldier King would be able to handle such a difficult task while talking about love and being on guard at the same time. G3 glanced at him and began to ponder. Bachelors like them. Was it because they weren't shameless enough and weren't bad enough that girls didn't look for them? Should he change his tough guy style and become a rascal one day when he was on vacation? But Q King's shameless way of chasing girls was something he couldn't learn even if he wanted to. Moreover, he definitely couldn't find his little fox-like girl. So, there was no need to think about it. It was hopeless. Yi Qian wasn't as thick-skinned as Xia Jinyuan. She blushed from the intense gazes that swept her back and forth. Her fist landed on his shoulder. "Xia Jinyuan, if you don't get up quickly, I'm going to get angry." Gently and quietly, her breath was like orchids spilling on the tip of his nose. It was faintly discernible and extremely seductive. "Yes, get up, get up. Of course I have to get up. Aren't I standing up now? Sigh, I actually saw you from so far away. I was too happy and lost my composure," he said jokingly, his hawk-like eyes staring at the moving tent in front of him. He never relaxed. He slowly got up, making Yi Qian have the urge to kick him again. But he asked softly and calmly, "Why did you sneak into the village? This is a no-man's land filled with herdsmen. Did something happen?" When she asked if something had happened, her eyes were even clearer than the stars, bursting with dazzling light. "Do you want to know?" Xia Jinyuan, who finally got up and squatted on the ground to observe, turned his head sideways and looked at Yi Jian, who obviously wanted to follow them. He smiled deeply and said, "That won't do. It's not the guy we met last time." There were some things that couldn't be said easily. Yi Qian pursed his lips, nodded, and didn't ask any more questions. Good girl. She was so obedient to him, like a cub looking for a reassuring hug. Xia Jinyuan's heart softened as he raised his hand and gently rubbed her head. The steel like him gave all his gentleness to this obedient girl in front of him. "Let's go back first. I'll come find you later." Actually, Yi Qian had only seen their equipment when she met with Han Zheng last year. He had vaguely mentioned it, so the quick-witted Yi Qian could vaguely guess that they were probably a special forces team. After more than a year of training, Yi Qian, who had learned a lot, immediately understood that the special forces were different from other units. Even if she saw them in action with her own eyes, it didn't mean that she could ask them why they were here. "So, Major Xia was thinking too highly of himself. I'm in the 9 o'clock direction, the third tent with the wind horse flag on it. If you need anything, you can come to me. Yi Qian didn't delay their mission. Han Jing and the other three had already taken action, so she couldn't delay Xia Jinyuan any longer. Last time, he didn't reject her for such a dangerous mission in Australia, but this time, he used such a joking tone to reject her. The danger factor was definitely higher than the mission in Australia. Chapter 288. To be honest, Yi Qian wasn't 100% confident in this operation, because just now, he could see the difference between him and them. He was subdued in an instant and didn't even have a chance to escape. Therefore, he should be aware of his own limitations. Be careful. There are strangers in the tent, but the Tibetan Mastiff that was guarding outside has been taken care of by them. I didn't hear any gunshots or smell any blood. I suspect that someone might have carried the Tibetan Mastiff out to bury it. She was reminding him that there were still people outside. Her meticulous thoughts made Xia Jinyuan's heart soften even more. He didn't let Yi Qian leave immediately. He gestured for her to hide, and the two of them hid behind the money pile. The moment Yi Jian squatted down, she was shielded behind his left hand. It seemed like a small action, but it made her heart tremble slightly. He was a person who could use both hands, but she knew that his left hand was actually the most agile. His left hand was faster and more agile than his right hand in terms of the speed of the gun and the strength of the attack. Being behind his left hand was safer than being behind his right hand. At the same time, it was equivalent to having two layers of protection in front of her. One was the money pile, and the other was his body. Take this. Xia Jinyuan pulled out a Type 54 pistol from his combat backpack. His low voice was full of joy. I'll leave my back to you, little fox. It was fine to let her observe him for a while. He had no choice. Looking at her eyes, he couldn't bear to reject her. Yi Qian raised her hand and gently pushed his left hand back. I have a gun. Principal Chun prepared a Type 54 pistol for me before we set off. And I have a sniper rifle. After a slight pause, she added, I have bullets too. You don't have to worry about me. She couldn't let him worry about her lack of equipment when he was protecting her. Little Fox would never put on a brave front in front of him. Xia Jinyuan understood that and smiled slightly. He whispered to G3 and K7 who were near the tent, there are about 2 people burying the mastiffs outside. How's the situation on your side? Q King, the situation isn't good. There are 4 hostages. G3's cold voice came through the earpiece. You can take care of the 2 players on your side first. Be careful. Yi Qian waited for him to end the call, then leaned closer to him and said softly, I can go back and look for Principal Chan first and find out how many Tibetans there are and how many tents there are. Why don't you wait here for me to go back and ask? It was a good thing that they could learn more about the village as soon as possible. With Xia Jinyuan's slight nod, Yi Jian's crouching figure really looked like a snow wolf walking in a snowy mountain. She disappeared into the darkness vigorously. Xia Jinyuan waited for Yi Qian to leave safely before approaching Han Jing and the others with his gun. Yi Qian will cooperate with us to figure out how many people we have and how many tents we have. Now, let's change the plan slightly. They needed a more detailed annihilation plan. At the same time, they also needed to ensure the safety of all the herdsmen. They still have a lot of bullets. If they are alerted and fight with us, the consequences will be unimaginable. Xia Jinyuan was gentle in front of Yi Qian, but in front of the enemy, he was bloodthirsty and cold. With a serious gaze, he said in a low voice, let's find out the situation in the tents first. Make sure one person enters the tents to protect the hostages. Chapter 289. It's impossible for the 5 of us to do it. The only people who can go in are Yi Qian and Uncle Chun. G3 looked up and was about to express his opinion when J5 held his arm and shook his head gently, indicating for him to continue listening to Q King and Xia Jinyuan's arrangements. In terms of battle command, Q King indeed had a talent that left them in the dust. While Xia Jinyuan was perfecting the annihilation plan, in the tent, Yi Qian stopped Principal Chun from lighting the oil lamp and said softly, I saw Major Xia and the others. There are 5 of them. I'm afraid something happened in the village. Even the Tibetan Mastiff in the outermost tent is silent. Uncle Chun, there are strangers in the village, and Major Xia and the others are chasing after the culprit. Now, they need to know how many herdsmen there are in the village and how many tents there are. I'm afraid we'll have to ask Uncle Jia to help us. Also, they need to ensure the safety of the herdsmen. Do you think we should inform the herdsmen so they can be mentally prepared? Just as Xia Jinyuan thought, Yi Qian's meticulous thinking made their plan even more perfect and thorough. Yi Qian was doing his best to help them. Even though they didn't know who they were dealing with, judging from their expressions, the people they were after must be very difficult to deal with. It was even possible that the other party had guns. If they didn't have guns, they wouldn't have to be so careful and cautious. Principal Chan had carried out missions in the Tibetan area before, so he immediately understood that the people who entered the village were definitely not easy to deal with. He said solemnly, "It's not a good thing to meet Captain Xia here. The people who came are also not easy to deal with. Lass, pack up our equipment." The bag that contained the sniper rifle had always been placed together with Yi Qian's luggage bag. After taking the bag out, Yi Qian, who had been trained by Uncle Jin to be familiar with any part of gun, quickly assembled the sniper rifle without even needing to light a lamp. The gun, the case, the barrel, the handle, and the stock were all in her hands. In less than a minute, she had assembled a sniper rifle. Finally, she installed the night vision scope, and it was a sniper rifle that could be used to snipe at night. After finalizing the plan with his comrades, Xia Jinyuan quickly found the second tent at 9 o'clock. He gave a signal from outside, and Principal Chun lifted the curtain and walked out. The girl is loading guns inside. How serious is the situation? Also, I found out from our conversation that the wife of the leader of the outermost tent is injured, so it's difficult for her to move around. Master Mu was injured? No wonder there was anti-inflammatory powder at the scene. Xia Jinyuan's eyes moved slightly, and he said in a low voice, "There are a total of 7 people, and they are all carrying light weapons. There are 3 XM M4A1 carbine rifles, 4 M10 Ingram submachine guns, and 1 IMI Barak pistol. Each of them is carrying about 1. Their firepower is level 2. Xia Jinyuan didn't hide this from Principal Chun. If he needed Yi Qian's help, he had to tell him the situation inside. "Uncle Chun, I want to know how many herdsmen and tents there are here." After hearing Principal Chen's answer, Xia Jinyuan looked at his comrades who were hiding nearby with a serious expression. "There are a total of 14 tents, 72 herdsmen, 23 children, and 19 elderly. It's unrealistic to move them all together, and it will alert the mercenaries." Mercenaries? Principal Chen's eyes darkened. He knew that this was not an ordinary problem. Chapter 290. Facing a mercenary with level 2 firepower, the risk factor is relatively high. Moreover, there are about 5 of them in the tent and 2 outside. If we don't act in time, once the mercenaries notice us, they will definitely fight with us. Then, the safety of the 79 Tibetans in the village will be threatened, and they may even die. What's your plan? If there's anything you need help with, just let me know. I'm quite familiar with this no man's land. I've been here for more than 6 years. Principal Chen's words made Xia Jinyuan respect him. 6 years in the no man's land. Based on Principal Chen's experience, the time he spent on the mission was around 7 to 8 years. That was when the border was in chaos. G3's voice came from inside. He was reporting the situation. A few seconds later, Xia Jinyuan said, "Uncle Chun, there's no movement from the mercenaries now. It's very likely that they are resting in the tent. We have 10 minutes to inform the herdsmen within 20 meters of the tent in front of us. Also, we need to inform the Tibetans. Our guns are not equipped with silencers. Once we fire, the Tibetans will be alerted. We don't have much time. Inform them all within 5 minutes." Principal Chun had no objections to his arrangement. As he nodded, Yi Qian, who had assembled 2 sniper rifles, walked out. "Is there anything I can do to help?" 2 sniper rifles, I think, will be of some help. Seeing her come out with 2 sniper rifles in high spirits, Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but raise his hand and pat her on the head. He said softly. To her, danger didn't make her afraid, but excited. You don't speak Tibetan, so little fox, your mission is to first go to the front with me and take care of the other two mercenaries. Second, guard the high ground. If you see anyone coming out, immediately snipe. Mercenaries? Is it? Yi Qian's eyes suddenly lit up. Then, without thinking, he said, they have rich combat experience, are ruthless, and fight for money. Then can I assume that as long as someone comes out with a gun, I can snipe them on the spot? Of course, I will see the hostages clearly. Yes, except for the hostages. You can snipe everyone. Xia Jinyuan smiled as he looked at Yi Qian's bright eyes. He took out 2 items from the first aid kit and handed them to Principal Chun. If you can light a lamp, light it first so that we can see the furnishings inside clearly. These are anti-inflammatory drugs and hemostatic drugs, just what they need. After handing over the medicine, Xia Jinyuan said in a low voice, On the way, we found that a herdsman had been killed. All the anti-inflammatory medicine he had with him had been taken away by the mercenaries. It meant that someone in the mercenary group was injured and anti-inflammatory drugs were an urgent necessity. Headmaster Chin's face darkened when he heard that a herdsman was killed. He took the medicine and glanced into the tent. He said in a low voice, Based on the current situation, this group of people won't kill in the village for the time being. They will rest tonight and leave the next day. Would there be a massacre at the moment? Would there be a massacre after they had rested enough and left? No one knew, so it had to be solved immediately. Yi Qian pursed his lips. Dai Qing frowned and said to Xia Jinyuan, Uncle Chin's knee has been hurting these days. I'll go and see. Chapter 291. Girl, if you could speak Tibetan, it would be appropriate for you to go S. Only the Tibetans closest to the 6 tents woke up. After hearing what was going on, they picked up their trident guns and wanted to fight with the mercenaries who dared to hurt the herdsmen in the village. The herdsmen were brave. If it wasn't for Uncle Tsiza, who was from the Tibetan army, there was no way to stop them. Principal Chun put on his Tibetan uniform and a hat. He looked no different from a Tibetan. Plus, he could speak Tibetan fluently. As G3 and the others held their breaths, the world-class snipe, but you don't. Principal Chun took the medicine and smiled. I've been out of the army for so many years. I don't have the spirit of a young soldier like you. Girl Jian, work with Captain Xia to get rid of the people outside. Listen to Captain Xia's orders. No matter what kind of battle it was, when the battle plan was set, the commander was the soul of the battle. They had to listen to him and couldn't make decisions on their own. Xia Jinyuan could see that Yi Qian was worried about going in alone. He said softly to Principal Chun, Don't worry, we have a way to get the people inside out. Uncle Chun going in is equivalent to protecting the hostages inside. Yi Qian was a little relieved when he said that. It seemed that they had a plan. This was a secret battle that couldn't be disturbed. Principal Chun and Uncle Tsiza bent over and started to inform the sleeping Tibetaner walked calmly towards the tent. Principal Chun, who was standing outside the tent, raised his voice. His voice was clear, and there was no trace of fear in it. K7 became the translator. He translated what Principal Chun said in a low voice. Is Dima here? I brought back the medicine you asked me to bring. You came back so late. You met a snow wolf at night and almost lost your life. Fortunately, I had a trident gun that allowed me to come back alive. After translating, K7 said in a low voice, This is a master. Is he retired from the frontline Tibetan army? He already went in. That's amazing. There were 2 meanings in one sentence. First, he came to deliver the medicine because he came back late. Second, he had a trident gun in his hand and could fight the snow wolf. That was why K7 said it was an expert talking. After Xia Jinyuan heard this, he smiled gently at Yi Qian and said, All the brothers respect Uncle Chun. Little fox, we don't have much time. Take care of the first 2 in 5 minutes. What do you think? The less time they spent outside, the more they could ensure Principal Chen's safety. Naturally, Yi Qian hoped to resolve this matter as soon as possible. The snowy wind in the no-man's land blew close to the snowy mountains. At night, the wind howled like a monster emitting a power that made people tremble. It was this kind of wind that not only concealed the sound of footsteps, but also brought the thick stench of blood to his side. It was the blood of a Tibetan Mastiff. They had used some unknown method to kill the Tibetan Mastiff. Hearing the sound of the stone falling, Yichien could not help but bite his lower lip. Through the night vision goggles, Xia Jinyuan, who had finished observing the situation, quietly whispered into Yichien's ear. The faint scent of mint and manliness enveloped her. "I'll take the right, you take the left. Let's attack together." He extended his clenched fist between the two of them. Yichien's lips curled up. He extended his fist. The big fist and the small fist lightly bumped together. The two of them moved to the left and right sides, each holding a military multi-purpose bayonet. What the two of them needed to do was to silently take care of the two mercenaries who were about to return. Chapter 292. In order to match Yichien's speed, Xia Jinyuan slowed down his footsteps by half a beat. He waited for the rocks to fly up, then his slender figure and her slender figure appear behind the two mercenaries at the same time. Yichien's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. For Xia Jinyuan and the others to chase after the culprits, they must be unforgivable, not to mention that they had killed a herdsman. The wind was howling, as if it was adding momentum to the upcoming life and death battle. Every fight was a matter of life and death. No matter the situation, staying calm was the key to a battle of life and death. In close combat, not only did the opponent not have a chance to shoot, but they also did not have a chance to shoot. Therefore, it was important to stay calm and not panic. "Soldier, damn it!" One of the mercenaries cursed in an unknown language and threw a fist at Yichien. Soon, he realized that the person who dared to fight with him was actually a girl, and he burst into laughter. The biggest taboo on the battlefield was to underestimate the enemy. Facing Yichien, he had underestimated him from the beginning. For Yichien, this was a good thing, and her performance was also showing weakness. Yichien had memorized how to use his advantage on the battlefield from the beginning of training. He did not dare to forget. There was indeed a great disparity in strength, but it was not that Yichien was weaker than the other party. From the beginning of the fight, he could tell that the other party's training was not professional. Moreover, leaving the tent and risking being discovered to abandon the Tibetan Mastiff showed that their status was average. In the mercenary army, there was a certain disparity in status. The dagger in his hand swept across with a gust of wind, and he could feel the sharp blade cutting through his skin. The battle of life and death was just that cruel. It was either you die or I die. Xia Jinyuan was fast and fierce. After a few sweeps, the dagger in his hand had pierced deeply into the other party's thigh. Before he could pull it out, the other party roared in pain and elbowed him hard in the head. This was a professionally trained mercenary. He surrounded Xia Jinyuan from both sides. Through the night vision goggles, he deliberately chose Xia Jinyuan and left the weaker one to Yichien. Xia Jinyuan was hit hard in the head. He felt a buzzing sound in his head. Relying on his instinct, he swung his fist and punched the man in the nose. When a person's nose was hit, not only would they subconsciously close their eyes, their brain would also go blank for a few seconds due to the pain. In those few seconds, Xia Jinyuan, as a soldier who had undergone rigorous training, performed bravely and fearlessly. Even though his brain had suffered a heavy blow, he was still able to accurately grasp the dagger in his opponent's thigh. He pulled it out, and warm blood spurted out, staining his combat gloves. The mercenary screamed. He raised his uninjured right foot and kicked Xia Jinyuan in the chest again. Unfortunately, his injured left leg slowed him down, and he could not fight back. Xia Jinyuan, who did not retreat, directly used his right arm to block the other party's kick. He needed to finish off this trapped mercenary on the spot. Xia Jinyuan's entire right arm was in so much pain that his face tensed up. In the next second, he leaped up and stabbed the bloody dagger into the other party's neck again. Under the combat gloves, the muscles and bones on the back of his hand were exposed. He was exerting force, forcefully twisting the dagger that was stuck in the other party's neck. This was a fatal blow, one that left the other party with no chance of survival. Chapter 293. There was only coldness on Qing Ye's elegant face. She pulled out the military dagger that had crushed the opponent's throat. The blood was like a flower blooming in the snow and wind. In the darkness, the blood became one with the night sky and fell to the ground. The blood splattered on his face, and when it was blown by the wind, it condensed in a blood frost on his face. Xia Jinyuan, who had just killed a mercenary, didn't have time to wipe off the blood frost on his face. He turned around and walked towards Yi Qian. However, he heard Yi Qian shout, "Go and support Uncle Chun, quick!" With her own strength, Yi Jian knew that she could get rid of this mercenary who was not very strong. At the same time, she also saw how dangerous the fight between Xia Jinyuan and the dead mercenary was. She was very worried that the mercenaries left in the tent were all strong and powerful. Uncle Chen's shoulder and knee were suffering from rheumatism. How could he be a match for them? Go. Don't make me worry. Yi Jian's clear voice was like a cold sword in autumn water, breaking through the wind and reaching his ears with a cold ruthlessness. Her dark eyes were filled with frost. Even her gaze was like Xia Jinyuan's, fierce and ruthless. Her eyes were filled with determination. In the face of life and death, in the face of a race against the Grim Reaper, her performance was the performance of an outstanding soldier. She would never back down. Little fox, remember, you are a soldier. You must know your mission and responsibility. You are not allowed to panic under any circumstances. Do you know what a soldier is? A soldier is the country's last line of defense, and also the line of defense that walks at the forefront. He didn't come over, but his voice traveled over. His low voice was filled with biting cold, and every word traveled into Yi Qian's ears. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left without hesitation, because Xia Jinyuan knew that his little fox was like a wolf cub that had left the pack and was using its own strength to hunt. She was using her strength to prove that there was nothing wrong with her. His words were just to tell her that even if she killed him personally, it was because he was a soldier, a line of defense for the motherland. There was no need for her to have any psychological barriers. To this day, Xia Jinyuan still remembered that more than a year ago in Australia, when she saw Yi Qian's hesitant expression when he killed someone for the first time, he had solemnly and sternly told her that it was an honor for a soldier to fight for the country, even if their hands were stained with blood. It was Yi Qian's first time fighting without anyone by his side. Even if something happened, there would be no one to support Yi Qian. It was also something he had to go through. As soon as Xia Jinyuan left, Yi Qian calmed down and began to attack fiercely. Fighting for the country, even if their hands were stained with blood, they would still feel glorious. He put away the military dagger in his hand and gently swiped his wrist. The end of the silver wire that had been hidden all this time fell into his hand. This was the beginning of Yi Qian's counterattack. He was using his own abilities to deal with a mercenary. The moment the silver wire in his hand wrapped around the mercenary's neck, Yi Qian stepped on a 20-centimeter rock and leaped into the air. Like an eagle spreading its wings, he leaped over the mercenary's head and wrapped the silver wire tightly around the mercenary's neck. With one end wrapped around his arm, no matter how hard the mercenary struggled, he pulled out the military dagger and stabbed forward. Amidst the roars, Yi Qian heard gunshots coming from the front. The battle had begun. Yi Jian forcefully pushed the dagger into the mercenary's body. As the mercenary roared even louder and struggled even harder, Yi Jian's entire body was instantly flung out, and she fell onto the sharp stone beach. The silver wire wrapped around her arm showed no signs of loosening. She didn't immediately get up. Instead, she planted her feet on the rocks and pulled out her pistol. Along with the gunshots coming from the front, Yi Qian fired the first of his 12 bullets. Chapter 294. Bang! After the gunshot, the silver wire wrapped around her arm suddenly lost its strength. Her blood seemed to have drifted into the snow and wind, turning into bloody snow beads that fell on her face. All of this happened as the mercenary from an unknown country fell to the ground with a thud. Yi Qian ended this one-man fight. The metallic smell of blood was stronger than before. Yi Qian gently closed her eyes and took a deep breath. After resting, she felt a burning pain on her back. She had been thrown to the ground just now, and her back had rubbed against the sharp rocks. She was afraid that her flesh had been injured. She took a deep breath and exhaled a long breath, as if she was exhaling all the blood that had floated into her chest. It's nothing. This is the path you chose, and it's also the path you must go through. She murmured softly and adjusted her panting breathing. When she retracted the silver wire and wrapped it around her wrist, her beautiful face was as calm as before. The path you must go through, you are good, they are evil. As Xia Jinyuan said, soldiers were the last line of defense of the motherland. Fighting for the country and the people was righteous and good. In front, the gunshots were particularly fierce. Yi Qian rushed to the front of Uncle Sija's tent. The sound of the bullets seemed to have brushed past her scalp. She rushed to the tent entrance and shouted, "Yang Jin." After hearing the answer from inside, she entered the tent. Yang Jin recognized the voice of the Han Chinese girl who came to stay in her house. She walked out from the dark and said quickly, "It's very dangerous outside. Where are you going?" The only thing she could understand was, "Where are you going? Be careful, hide well." "I'm going out." Yi Qian used the Tibetan language she had learned to gently remind Yang Jin, who was lying in a corner of the ground. She picked up the sniper rifle left in the tent and went to the sniping spot. She set up the gun, put her eyes close to the night vision sight, adjusted the distance, and searched for the target in the green world. A man in Tibetan clothing entered his line of sight. He zoomed in and slowly focused on him. As the other party retreated, he could see that the man in Tibetan clothing would cover his waist with his hands from time to time. Xia Jinyuan had said that a high-ranking member of the mercenary group was injured. At this time, she found that this Tibetan not only did not hide in the tent, but had been looking for a hiding place outside. His whereabouts were already very suspicious. However, he couldn't just assume that there was something wrong with the other party based on his own guesses. He didn't immediately take action and turn off the red laser. He just kept aiming at the other party. Perhaps it was because the herdsmen were all brave. No matter how loud the gunshots were outside, no one ran out in a panic. In this area, they believed in the uniformed soldiers. In the eyes of the herdsmen, the soldiers guarding the border were their guardians. Every year, they would offer countless hada as a sign of their passion and respect. It was this kind of trust that made them choose to stay in the tent and wait for the gunshots outside to pass. What did the soldiers fight for? Naturally, it was for their country and the people they protected. Every bullet that was fired was a sign of their fearlessness. They were fighting bravely without fear of death. Yi Qian hadn't put on his military uniform yet, but he had already placed himself above the soldiers. He believed that he was a soldier from the bottom of his heart. When he saw Han Zhang holding a gun and chasing in the direction where the man in Tibetan clothing was hiding, he didn't hesitate to pull the trigger of his sniper rifle. The laser flashed, and the bullet was fired. Chapter 295. In 0.3 seconds, the brain of the target, who was still hiding, was pierced by the sharp bullet. After a few centimeters, the bullet burst out of the brain and pierced through the tent with the remaining force, landing somewhere unknown. The target was lying on the side. In order to hit the target with one shot, Yi Qian chose the most brutal way of sniping. The sound of the gunshot made Han Zhang stop in his tracks. He seemed to have thought of something. He glanced at the high ground and made an okay gesture. He then pointed to the front and signaled Yi Qian to snipe the second target. The sound of the sniper bullet didn't sound too out of place in the gunfight. Han Zhang informed all his comrades of Yi Qian's position through his earpiece. Successfully sniped the first target. There's still one more person, little fish. Lure him outside. Yi Qian is at the high ground. He can take care of little fish in minutes. The death of the leader of the mercenaries was a good thing for the comrades of the Snowfield Brigade. Xia Jinyuan adjusted his earpiece and said, "What are Yi Qian's coordinates?" Z7, report. After Han Zheng reported Yi Qian's coordinates and direction, Yi Qian saw Han Zheng make another gesture through the night vision scope. There's a target at 10 o'clock, requesting sniping. She immediately aimed her sniper rifle at the 10 o'clock direction and aimed. Soon, she saw a black shadow moving slowly among a pile of rocks. The corner of Yi Jian's mouth curled up slightly. The crosshair of the scope firmly locked onto the target and moved along with the target's movements. The 7.62mm bullet flew out of the fireproof cap and flew straight at a distance of about 300 meters. Her sniper rifle had a range of 800 meters. With the wind speed at a distance of 300 meters and Yi Qian's calculations, the sharp bullet pierced through the air and hit the target in the back. The target was hit within 300 meters. The shooting stopped and the butter lamps in the tent lit up one by one. It was very calm. It was as if the herders had just woken up. There were no panic screams or cries of fear. They were the descendants of heroes, so they were very calm in the gunfight. When Yi Qian came down with his sniper rifle, he saw a black shadow standing quietly on the rocky beach. Behind him was a majestic snowy mountain. He was like a snowy mountain. He stood there quietly with a majestic aura. He made people feel at ease. He made people feel that he could protect the peace of the area. Xia Jinyuan now. He was even more charming than he was a year ago. He was wise and calm in the face of enemies. He fought side by side with him. No matter how dangerous the road ahead, he was willing to walk with Yi Qian. There was no way back, only forward. With him around, no matter how tough it was, they could walk side by side. This was Xia Jinyuan's charm. His charm was incomparable. Little fox, are you admiring the night view? Or are you waiting for me to walk over? She stood not far away and did not move. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. His black eyes were as bright as the stars, rippling gently. I think you're waiting for me to walk over and give me a warm hug. He could quickly walk out of the smoke and fire of war and be himself again. Yi Qian heard this and immediately jumped over a rock. Unexpectedly, he felt a tearing pain in his back. The sudden pain came. Even Yi Jian, who had always been able to endure it, couldn't help but gasp. It seemed that the injury was a little serious, especially the side of the waist. It seemed that the skin and flesh had split open. Chapter 296. The sound of pain was particularly clear in the quiet night. Xia Jinyuan, who had been smiling, immediately put away his smile and walked over. Sit down. Where are you hurt? He put his arm around her shoulders and turned on the headlights on his helmet. In the light, they could see Yi Qian's beautiful face and his elegant, handsome face. Yi Qian didn't even have a chance to refuse before he helped her sit on the rock. It was late at night. The rock was really, really cold. In August, the temperature in the no man's land would drop to a few degrees below zero. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a phenomenon where blood spurted out and fell to the ground. Soon, Xia Jinyuan also realized that it wasn't appropriate to sit on the cold rock in the cold wind to check where she was hurt. He smiled and said, Sorry, I'm used to being rough in the military camp. I'm a little, not very good at taking care of girls. Please forgive me. This was definitely the truth. As Han Zheng said, Xia Jinyuan was born into an aristocratic family. He was humorous and witty, but he had always been conservative when it came to relationships. At 21 years old, he really wasn't good at taking care of girls. Yi Qian wouldn't let him take care of her. As soon as his hand left her, she immediately stood up and said, It's not a big problem. Maybe it's just a scratch. Aren't you going to clean it up? They're all busy downstairs. You haven't gone back yet. How can I be at ease? Her refusal made Xia Jinyuan's lips curve slightly. Come, make a choice. Do you want to carry her? Or carry her on your back? Pick one of the two. There's no third option. Yi Qian. Why does he like to act shamelessly in front of me? She tightened her grip on the sniper rifle and looked away with a faint smile. No, I can walk on my own. What a headache. She wasn't really a 15-year-old girl. How could she deal with Xia Jinyuan? She couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't be as cold as she was with Yi Jifan's family, and she couldn't be too enthusiastic either. She wanted to maintain a gentlemanly friendship, but he liked to cross the line. No matter how smart Yi Qian was, she had no idea how to deal with relationships between men and women. When faced with Major Xia, who was acting shamelessly and teasing her from time to time, she couldn't do anything about it. That won't do. Just now, every step you took was so painful that you gasped. We're still a few hundred meters away from the village. Won't you feel pain every step you take? He smiled at the little girl who kept trying to find ways to reject him. Even though his deep gaze was deep and gentle, it was just the right amount of a man. Come! Yi Jian looked up and stared at him. The major, who had just finished a battle, had not taken off his helmet. The light shone on him, revealing his elegance, just like that of a noble young master. His silhouette was perfect, and his eyes were clear. There was a warmth deep in his eyes that could drown people. This Xia Jinyuan vividly expressed the delicate feelings and tenderness of a soldier. Her eyelids drooped slightly, and she smiled helplessly. Captain Xia, I did choose the third option, but I don't have a third option. Xia Jinyuan maintained the smile she was most familiar with. It was elegant, noble, and especially dangerous. Just when Yi Qian thought he would continue to insist that there were only two options, the man who had always been unpredictable said slowly, "However, I've always respected girls." "Okay, tell me what your third option is." "Oh, I know even without you saying it. You can walk on your own, right?" Chapter 297. Yi Jian, who felt that she couldn't keep up with his pace, pursed her lips, took a step forward, and said to him, "Indeed, I can walk on my own. As for the road that I can walk on my own, I hope that I can walk it step by step. As long as I can walk on my own, I will persist no matter how difficult it is." Her injury was indeed serious. Just a small step was enough to cause her back muscles to spasm in pain. This time, she was on guard and did not show it. Instead, she took one step after another and brushed past him, once again widening the distance between the two of them. The smell of blood on her body completely exposed Yi Qian's injury. Xia Jinyuan's smile slowly disappeared and his eyes darkened. He turned around and looked at the stubborn figure that brushed past him. He sighed softly. "It's so hard to walk on your own. Silly fox, why don't you think of relying on others? If you continue to walk like this, you will be the only one suffering." Xia Jinyuan chased after her with a slight pain in his heart. She had her third choice. Then, he would give her a fourth choice. Since she had chosen to walk on her own, he would walk with her. Judging from the way she walked, her back was injured. He could not hug or carry her, so he could only help her carry the gun. After catching up, Xia Jinyuan melted all his helplessness into a smile. "Come, give me the gun. We can walk slowly." Not only did he leave her with some dignity, but he also showed his respect for her. Yi Qian did not refuse again. If he did, he would seem pretentious and pretentious. He handed the gun over and smiled. Helping each other on a battlefield is also a form of friendship. "Thank you. For now, I don't think we are comrades." Xia Jinyuan took the heavy sniper rifle and raised his eyebrows slightly. He jokingly said, "The army would not dare to recruit an underage soldier like you." Yi Qian glanced at him. "Didn't you say we were comrades? Why did you change your mind so quickly? It seems like you don't understand what a comradeship is. Just now, I said that I would give you two choices. If it were Han Jing, there wouldn't be a second choice." When it came to education and brainwashing, Xia Jinyuan had always been good at both. As such, he began to explain to Yi Qian what comradeship was. "You were injured, so it was necessary for me to help you. This is also a reflection of the camaraderie between comrades. In the end, you rejected me without a second word. Little fox, you're the one who rejected my comradeship first." He had to let her know that trusting him and giving him her hand was not a difficult thing to do. If she was too tired, she could rely on him for a while. If Yi Qian was really a 15 or 16-year-old girl, she would definitely be fooled by his serious tone. Fortunately, she wasn't. Therefore, he maintained his composure and answered, "Captain Xia, I haven't seen you for more than a year, and your ability to fool people has improved a lot. What is comradeship? Other than helping each other, there is also encouragement. I encourage my comrades to face difficulties and overcome them. Just like what I did just now, you wouldn't have given Han Jing a second choice because you knew he would persevere. That's why this little girl said, "I was a fox." She saw things clearly at such a young age. She even knew what comradeship was. She must have done some research. Chapter 298. But you're a special exception, so I can't treat everyone equally. Xia Jinyuan laughed heartily. His handsome eyes were as bright as the moon in the sky. If he continued, it would be a complete rejection. He had to stop talking about this topic. After thinking about it, he naturally changed the topic. When you really wear the military uniform one day, I will definitely treat everyone equally. Yi Qian also secretly breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. She was really afraid that he would say something else that would make her want to run away. One was an astonishingly talented hunter. The other was a cunning and intelligent fox. This was destined to be an evenly matched contest. Sorrowful cries came from the tent. It was Dima's wife crying. She already knew that her husband had been killed. Yi Qian stopped in her tracks and looked sadly at the tent where the cries came from. She remembered that once her mother also cried like this. It was after her father died in an accident. Her mother hugged her and cried. Not long after, the gentle and beautiful mother in her memory no longer came back with a smile. Instead, she was covered by a national flag and returned to the village as a small jar. Although she had memories at that time, she did not know what sacrifice was. When she arrived at Yi Jifan's house, she was dragged into the kitchen by Sun Dongqing and beaten with a stick for the first time because she snatched an egg from Sun Dongqing. Only then did she know that she had become an orphan without parents. In her previous life, because she knew early, she was afraid early and developed a cowardly character that did not dare to fight with Ying. Don't underestimate the Tibetans. They are brave people. Even if Dima is not around, his wife will still take care of this family. Her sadness made Xia Jinyuan raise his hand and gently rub her hair. Everything will be fine. There is no hurdle in this world that cannot be overcome. You were able to grit your teeth and walk away from Yi Jifan's family to live a wonderful life. Dima's wife is a mother and will also be strong for her child. Yi Qian nodded gently and did not say anything. She silently returned to Uncle Xija's tent. Xia Jinyuan was afraid that little fox was so sad because she thought about her past. He had sent her to the tent and was about to leave to deal with the follow-up matters in the team. However, he changed his mind at the last minute and chose to stay with her. As she turned around, she did not see Xia Jinyuan's downcast eyes. He sighed and felt sorry for her because of her sadness. He glanced at the swaying shadows in front of him and the nomads standing outside the tent. Xia Jinyuan pressed down on his headset and said to the team members who were cleaning up, "Yi Qian is injured, so I'll accompany her for a while. After cleaning up, accompany the herdsmen to the rocky beach and bring the unfortunate Dima back to the village. If there's anything we can help with, we'll do our best to help the Dimas." G3 and the others were cleaning up the corpses of the 7 mercenaries. From the investigation to the registration, they had to be very careful. Hearing this, they said in a low voice, "We'll take care of the rest. Take good care of Yi Qian." After all, it was rare to meet a girl who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the male soldiers. Moreover, she was still a student. Yi Qian walked into the tent. The adults were not there. Only Yang Jin was sitting alone in front of the butter lamp. There was an unsheathed waist knife on the table and a 3-prong gun next to it. Seeing Yi Qian come in, Yang Jin immediately got up to greet him and asked, "Are you okay? I was very worried about you." Soon, she saw the strange man who came in after him and stopped in her tracks. Chapter 299. Yi Qian walked up to her and hugged her gently. Since they couldn't communicate in Tibetan, they could only express their feelings through body language. Yang Jin, who had gone to primary school, didn't know how to speak Mandarin. She hugged Yi Qian gently and looked at him curiously. She only looked away when he smiled at her. "Her back is injured. You need to be gentler." Xia Jinyuan, who was standing behind them, smiled and communicated with Yang Jin in Tibetan. Next, I need to treat her wound. What Yi Jian could understand was that he was saying, "Thank you. Sorry for bothering you." When she was about to ask Yang Jin to help her again, the enthusiastic Tibetan girl set a string of sutras and left the tent with her sutras like a butterfly fluttering in the grassland in June. Once Yang Jin left, Yi Qian frowned slightly. "My back is injured. Captain Xia, it's not appropriate for you to stay." She was really vigilant, as if she was afraid of what he would do. "Why are you afraid of an injured little fox?" He picked up the sniper rifle beside him and didn't mention Yi Qian's injury. Instead, he asked, "Where should I put it after removing it? Give me the bag." Yi Qian didn't feel relieved when he didn't mention it. Instead, he felt even more uncomfortable. "I'll do it myself. Can you go out first? I want to treat my wound myself. Let's see how it goes. Weren't you very strong on the mountain just now? Why are you in such a hurry to treat your wound now?" He sat cross-legged on a sheepskin rug on the ground and removed the sniper rifle from his hands. He looked up and saw Yi Qian still standing there. He couldn't help but smile and teased. "What's wrong? Did I make you angry?" His handsome face was full of confusion. He didn't seem to understand what Yi Qian wanted to do. What did he want to do? Yi Qian couldn't explain it himself. But Xia Jinyuan was sitting there and not leaving. It wasn't good. How was she supposed to take off her clothes? She clearly said that she wanted to treat her own wound. She didn't believe that she didn't understand. However, with the way he was acting, it would seem that she was overthinking if she said anything else. Yi Jian was a little discouraged. "Captain Xia, don't play dumb in front of me. My meaning is very clear. I need to ask you to leave now," because she was a little embarrassed, but she still enunciated each word clearly, "because I want to take off my clothes." "You want me, a 15-year-old girl, to take off my clothes in front of an adult man like you?" In return, he laughed heartily. His deep and handsome eyes seemed to reflect thousands of mountains and rivers. "Firstly, the person I asked Yang Jin to invite hasn't arrived yet. Secondly, you're injured on your back. It's not convenient for you to treat the wound yourself. Thirdly," he looked Yi Qian up and down from head to toe, then met her gaze like a gentleman. Chapter 300. Such a little fox, full of wildness and vigor. He really wanted to sit quietly like this, quietly watch, and then tease her. He wanted to see her face filled with the vigor that a girl of her age should have, because of his words. She would be embarrassed, she would laugh, she would be flamboyant, she would be full of vibrant colors. There were hurried footsteps outside. Someone was coming towards the tent. Xia Jinyuan stamped his feet and stood up from the sheepskin blanket. "I heard the footsteps. It should be Yang Jin's men. I will wait outside. Call me if anything happens." Yi Qian rubbed her forehead. In her previous life, she had been forced to observe others secretly and carefully avoid minefields. But Xia Jinyuan, she had never seen through him. Xia Jinyuan walked out and saw Principal Chun walking towards him hurriedly. When he saw him, he immediately asked, "Is Miss Jin injured? Where's the injury? Is it serious?" "You?" He asked a series of questions. It was obvious how worried he was. "The injury is on her back. She told me that she fell on her back when she was fighting. I'm afraid it's serious. As for where it is, I don't know. She's like a porcupine. She's afraid that I'll stay." Xia Jinyuan said helplessly, "I'll have to trouble this Tibetan girl to invite a herdsman's wife who knows a little. She won't refuse." When Headmaster Chun heard this, he stopped in his tracks. He gave some instructions to Yang Jin, who had already called people over, and then stayed outside the tent. He shook his head and laughed. This girl is really vigilant. When she goes to the front lines in the future, she won't differentiate between men and women. But it's good that she has some awareness. The herdsman's wife's scream came from inside the tent. Xia Jinyuan, who was about to say something, was so shocked that he lifted the curtain and rushed in. At a glance, he saw a bloody wound on the side of his waist that was facing away from him. That injury made his pupils constrict. He walked to Yi Jian, who was lying on the bed because of his intrusion. He pressed one hand on her smooth shoulder and said in a low voice, "Don't move." Then he immediately informed his team members. Bring the first aid kit, including hemostasis, anti-inflammatory drugs, and normal saline over here. Hurry. Is it serious? Right away. J5 was the first to respond. He took out his first aid kit and G3's first aid kit. I'm coming. K7 also took out his first aid kit. Han Jing said, You're injured too. Save some. If it's not enough, I'll ask you for more. J5 position. All right, I'll be right there. Han Jing's crisp voice came through the earpiece. Not long after, the J5 rushed over with the first aid kit that Han Jing had sent over. Q King, come out and get it yourself. J5, who was already standing outside the tent but was blocked by Principal Chun, said in a low voice. Then he straightened his back and saluted to Principal Chun. Sorry for making you worry. Xia Jinyuan had said that Uncle Chun had spent 6 years in the Tibetan area. As a soldier, he could tell at a glance that this retired veteran had a pair of eyes that were sharper than any of them. And his hands, they were a pair of hands that could hold a gun. He stopped J5 because he didn't want him to rush in. If her back was injured, she would definitely take off her clothes. This girl even resisted Captain Xia, who was familiar with her, let alone other male soldiers. He took the first aid kit and said in a deep voice, You guys have worked hard. We're here, so don't worry. Let's deal with the herdsman first. Don't leave any disputes. Chapter 301. If there are any financial losses, you can write it down first. But remember, don't ask for compensation in person. They don't need money. Headmaster Chun gave a few more words of advice based on his experience. It could be seen that even though he had retired from the army, his heart would always remain in the army. The herdsman's wife came out to get the medicine. After taking the 3 first aid kits, she hurriedly returned to the tent. Her expression was serious. It was obvious how deep Yi Qian's injury was. The J5 nodded slightly, saluted again, and strode away. In the tent, Yi Qian was lying on the bed. His back was illuminated by the butter lamp. His uninjured skin was fair and delicate. The curve of his back was slender and beautiful. It rose and fell like a mountain range. However, such a perfect back was ruined by a bloody 5-centimeter long wound on the right side of his waist. It was like a landscape painting that was torn in half. Yi Qian closed his eyes. He didn't dare to look at Xia Jinyuan, who was bending over to check his wound. He bit his lower lip lightly. He was so embarrassed that his whole body was stiff. Xia Jinyuan took off his helmet, gloves, and even his multi-purpose combat vest. His expression was solemn. He said coldly, Relax. If you're so tense, it'll shrink the wound. Not only will it hurt you, but it'll also cause you to lose more blood. Hearing his cold voice, Yi Qian gently exhaled. She was thinking too much. I'm sorry to have troubled you in the end. He washed his hands in the Highland barley wine and put on the medical gloves and the first aid kit. Without looking up, he said softly to Yi Qian, There's no need to apologize or say that it's troublesome. After all, you were injured because of us. Bear with it. I'll use normal saline to debridement and stop the bleeding. If it really hurt, Yi Qian felt that he was probably numb from the pain, so he didn't feel much pain. Her whole face was already as red as an apple. She nodded. She didn't even want to speak. Just now he had rushed in like that. Luckily, she reacted quickly and threw herself on the bed. If she had been a second slower, her upper body would have been seen by him. But now, even his voice was so serious. It really saved her from embarrassment and helped her adjust her mentality as soon as possible. Yi Qian had the mentality of a little girl, but Xia Jinyuan's gaze had been fixed on her wound from the moment he rushed in. Such a long and bloody gash attracted all his attention. So how could he possibly look elsewhere? Yi Qian's body stiffened when the saline solution was poured on her. Her entire wound started to twitch. It was so painful that she had to bite her lower lip to stop herself from making a sound. I'm afraid the bandage isn't enough. If it hurts, bite your sleeve tightly. I don't want to treat the wound on your lower lip after treating the wound on your back. Xia Jinyuan lowered his head to clean the wound. His handsome face was so calm that there was not a trace of emotion. He calmly faced the wound that was even more hideous after being cleaned with normal saline. Cleaning the wound was an essential process. In order to reduce infection and inflammation, it was necessary to repeatedly rinse the wound with normal saline solution until the bleeding was completely stopped. After the debridement, he would then start to suture the wound. Silk thread was suitable for suturing skin tissue. Without anesthesia, when the first needle pierced the skin, Yi Qian's forehead was dripping with sweat. She bit the corner of her shirt tightly and endured the immense pain. After a while, Yi Qian's face was as white as a sheet. Chapter 302. 3 more minutes. Amidst the excruciating pain, Xia Jinyuan's voice was like a morning bell, carrying the power of encouragement through the heavy fog. Yi Qian, who was in a trance, gently blinked his eyes, murmured, "Unmission." He waited for the 3 minutes to pass. Field bandaging, field suturing, and wound management were all skills that every member of the Snowfield Brigade had to learn. Yi Qian originally wanted to remind him to use the simple interrupted suture technique to close her wound, but when he started stitching, he could feel that he was using this technique. The procedure was simple. Every stitch was tied individually, which was the most suitable for her current wound. 3 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan used cotton dipped in saline to disinfect the wound again, covered it with sterile gauze, and fastened the gauze with a bandage. The whole process took about half an hour to complete. It's about 6 centimeters long and 2 centimeters deep. You can see the texture of the skin. Little fox, oh little fox, you can really endure it. He took off the bloodstained gloves and put away all the medical equipment. He sighed to Yi Qian, who was still in a daze. The male soldiers in the army don't seem to be as tolerant as you are. Come, tell me the truth. Did you reject my help just now because you don't like being helped? Or because you don't like my help? Yi Qian closed his eyes and answered with silence. How was she supposed to answer? Both. But if she really said it out loud, based on her understanding of Xia Jinyuan, he would probably get angry. Her intuition told her that angering a dangerous man was not a good thing, so it was best to keep silent. It was rare for her to be so shameless. Plus, she was injured and in pain for so long. Xia Jinyuan pursed his lips and didn't ask any more questions. He had enough time to wait for her answer. There was no way to put on the clothes again. Xia Jinyuan, who had tidied everything up, took a look at the environment of the tent and furrowed his brows. She couldn't move, nor could she put on her clothes. Even if she covered herself with a blanket, she couldn't cover her wound. If everyone slept in the same tent, they would more or less notice her naked back. There's no way to put on clothes. When Uncle Chun and the others come in, I'll sit in front of you and block them for you. Xia Jinyuan could only choose to use his body to block Yi Qian's smooth, jade-like, but flawed back. Girls should be more careful. At this time, he was reminding her that girls should be more careful. What was he thinking when he was on top of her and didn't get up? Xia Jinyuan, who was about to wipe her sweat with a bandage in his hand, found it funny that she was still silent. What do you mean by not saying a word? Are you giving me full authority to handle this? Or do you don't need me to block? His body had already gently leaned down, and his slender body perfectly covered her jade-like back. Then do you want me to go out? Xia Jinyuan, I'm injured right now. Yi Qian, who was completely covered by his body, was so embarrassed that her pale face turned an abnormal shade of red. In the past, she could have pushed him away, but now, she didn't even dare to touch him. Moreover, her back was still bare. After living for 2 lifetimes, this was the first time Yi Qian exposed her back in front of a man. Her embarrassment greatly pleased Xia Jinyuan. This humorous man only felt that. It was his fortune to be able to see her embarrassment. Chapter 303. After living for 2 lifetimes, this was the first time that Yi Qian had exposed her back in front of a man. Xia Jinyuan, who was humorous and witty, felt that he was lucky to be able to see her shyness. He was glad that he was there during her most youthful years. His body temperature spread to the skin on her back through his combat uniform. It was hot and scalding, as if his scent had seeped out of every pore on her body. Yi Qian, whose expression was completely unnatural, closed his eyes. After he steadied his breathing, he calmly said, "Can you stay a little further away from me? Even if you're trying to shield me, you don't have to use such a method." "Captain Xia, aren't you afraid of being misunderstood?" "Misunderstood? How so?" Under the illumination of the butter lamps, Xia Jinyuan could clearly see that Yi Qian's ears were so red that they looked like they were about to bleed. The bandage used to wipe her sweat was gently pressed against the side of her forehead. His deep and magnetic voice sounded like the strings of a zither. "What misunderstood? I'm just wiping your sweat so that you can sleep more comfortably. Don't think too much, little fox. How old are you? Why do you always think too much? Don't think too much, mature too early, and grow old too early." It took a lot of effort to make her remember him from time to time. Eating away at her shyness every day would probably make her unable to be shy in front of other men in the future. She would be able to maintain her cold and arrogant composure. Major Xia had indeed put in a lot of effort to make sure that Yi Qian would think of him when she was alone. For the time being, he couldn't say that he loved her. Love was equal, it was waiting for him, and it was loyalty. He couldn't afford to ask her to wait for him. He just needed her to remember that if she really wanted to find a boyfriend, the first person she would think of was Xia Jinyuan. Yi Qian knew that he was teasing her again. She decided not to say anything and let him wipe her sweat. In her heart, she was secretly pondering whether she should go back to the bookstore to buy a few books on men's psychology to read, so that she wouldn't be at a loss when facing such a man. Xia Jinyuan knew when to stop. She fell silent and put away the teasing look on her face. She said sternly, "You can't get out of bed for the next 3 days. I will keep an eye on you at all times. If you need anything, you can call me any time within 24 hours, including going to the toilet. Gao Yuan is injured. This is the most dangerous thing. I need to protect your safety at all times. After 24 hours, you can ask Yangjin to help you. After 72 hours, you can slowly move around by yourself. 7 days later, I'll send a car to pick you up and leave the no man's land." 3 days later, he would rush back to the army to report on the completion of his mission. He would stay for 1 day in between, and on the 7th day, he would drive back just in time to pick her up and leave. After he finished speaking and wiped off his sweat, he stood up and allowed Yi Qian to take in a long breath of air that was free of his scent. If she could, she really wanted to run out and get some fresh air. "I asked Uncle Chun to come over. The guys in my earpiece also said that they wanted to come over and take a look. Lie down and don't move. I won't be responsible if you're exposed." His stern tone only lasted for a while. Yi Qian heaved a sigh of relief, but she heard him teasing her again with a half-smile. Yi Qian raised her eyes and gently closed them again. She had an idea and smiled coldly. "I won't let you take responsibility. I'll take responsibility for myself. You worked hard just now. I wanted to help you, but I didn't expect to cause trouble for you." Chapter 304. "No, I don't think you're causing trouble. You left the wound to me without any hesitation. Little fox, I should be the one thanking you for trusting me." Xia Jinyuan had already sat down elegantly. He faced the tent and hid his gentleness, revealing a cold expression. "I'll ask them to come over and take a look. You can sleep. As for taking responsibility, do you think I'll take responsibility?" Yi Qian couldn't hold back anymore. She turned her head and stared at the man who had reverted to his old ways. She glanced at his arrogant sideburns and smiled. Then, "Major Xia, are you willing to take responsibility? If you're willing to take responsibility, I've already shown you my back. You'll have to take responsibility." Little Fox was starting to argue with him again. Not bad. She completed the suture without anesthesia and still had the energy to stay calm and argue with him. Very good. At least she was in good spirits. Although it was ungentlemanly for a man to argue with a woman, what could he do? Little Fox was the only girl that he was interested in teasing both with her words and her actions. Hearing this, he raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. "You can make a guess. Whether I'll take responsibility or not depends on your guess. Are you trying to turn the tables? TSK, TSK, TSK. Little Fox, you're still too inexperienced. He lifted the quilt and placed it under Yi Qian's waist. Then, he picked up a blanket and gently placed it on her shoulders. Only her waist, which was wrapped in a white bandage, was exposed. Even so, before Xia Jinyuan let Han Jing and the others in, he sat up straight. When they wanted to check on the wound, he immediately blocked them. This made the other four little friends dumbfounded. What a shameless behavior. He didn't even see the wound, and he chased them away. Was this what you call a visit? A man's head and a woman's waist. Even if Yi Qian is a student, she's still a female student. Just one look is enough. Looking at her more than once won't help her recover. His explanation was so dignified that his friends were speechless. K7 chuckled and gave Xia Jinyuan a meaningful look before leaving the tent. Outside, Principal Chun and Uncle Xiza were talking. K7 came out and joined the conversation. He was good at Tibetan and had no difficulty communicating. Soon, Uncle Xiza patted him on the shoulder and welcomed him to come back next time. A dog that bites doesn't bark. I bet K7 said something bad after washing socks for a week. I bet Uncle Chun will talk to Q King when he comes out. As a former instructor, J5 was very familiar with this tactic. The first step was to snitch, the second step was to provide examples, the third step was to distance oneself, and the fourth step was to sacrifice one's friends rather than oneself. Based on the current situation, K7 was in the fourth step. G3 put on the combat gloves he had taken off and slowly said in a gravelly voice, "Were you best at when you're a forensic doctor? So, don't be surprised." He turned around and glanced at the tent with a faint smile in his eyes. She was indeed an extraordinary woman. No wonder Q King treasured her so much. If she wasn't injured that night, Yi Qian wouldn't have felt sleepy. When he told her to sleep, she actually fell into a deep sleep. Usually, she was so alert that she would wake up at the slightest movement. Now, she was so asleep that she didn't even know when Han Jing and the others came and left. Chapter 305. Yang Jin blew out the oil lamps one by one, plunging the entire tent into darkness. She slept on the new blanket, not daring to sleep with the injured Yi Qian. Outside the tent, Xia Jinyuan said with a cold expression, "Uncle Chun, Yi Qian's injury is not suitable for him to move. I will watch over him tonight and let Yang Jin take care of him after 24 hours. Although his injury is serious, he has a good physique. As long as the wound is not inflamed, he will recover quickly. Okay, I can rest assured that you will take care of him, but..." Principal Chun glanced at Han Jing and the others, who had not left, and said to them directly, "I want to have a private conversation with him. You can all go and rest." It was definitely not convenient for them to listen in on private conversations. Moreover, they could vaguely guess what the topic was. Han Jing smiled and patted Xia Jinyuan's shoulder. Before he left, he said softly, "Extreme joy begets sorrow, young Master Xia." He was hugging a little girl and calling her my little fox, as if he was declaring his sovereignty. He was afraid that they would take a second look. Just now, his gaze accidentally fell on Yi Qian's exposed shoulder. Damn! He was sitting by the bed and glanced over as if he wanted to eat someone. His expression was one of prioritizing love over friendship. He had to let Uncle Chun teach him a lesson. What Principal Chun wanted to say was indeed related to Yi Qian. As for what he said, Han Jing and the others did not know. Even Yi Qian did not know. It was already past 1 in the morning. Although the temperature outside was very low, it was still very warm sitting in the tent. They were not at Uncle Xiza's house now, but at another herdsman's house. The master and mistress had both gone to Dima's house, leaving the 3 children to be taken care of. Principal Chun promised to take care of them until the master's family returned. There was a fire in the fireplace, and it was burning brightly. Sitting by the fire, they felt so comfortable that they felt lazy. Xia Jinyuan did not speak. He waited for Principal Chun, who wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with him, to speak first. "You have other thoughts about Unyielding, don't you?" Principal Chun did not beat around the bush. After sitting down, he directly cut to the chase. "I can see that Major Xia is interested in Unyielding. If it's a spur-of-the-moment thing, Major Xia, I advise you not to provoke an orphan. These words were a bit harsh. However, it was true that he truly cared about the little fox, which was why he was so direct in protecting her. Junyin smiled and said calmly, Uncle Chun, I have no intention of provoking Yi Qian. It's not a spur-of-the-moment thing moment. In the past year or so, although I've been outside, I've been thinking about myself and Yi Jian the most when I calm down. But thinking too much, it doesn't mean I have a relationship with Unyielding. I think you also know that Yi Jian is still too young and is still a high school student. Even if I have feelings for her, I will prioritize taking care of her. I will not have any improper thoughts. Moreover, she has always been very vigilant, especially when interacting with foreign creatures. Occasionally, she would show an expression that would hurt people. This is similar to social anxiety. A year ago, her situation was considered serious. Now, it seems that she has improved a lot. However, she is not good at handling relationships with the opposite sex. This is her weakness. You and Uncle Jin want to send her to the military to develop. With her ability, she will not be assigned to a place with many female soldiers. After many rounds of selection, she will definitely be sent to the front lines. However, if there are any obstacles in her path, it will greatly affect her military career. It had to be said that Xia Jinyuan was an excellent lobbyist. He was also very good at analyzing and thinking from their point of view. Everything he said just now was exactly what Headmaster Chen wanted to hear. Chapter 306. Xia Jinyuan would never fight a battle that he had no confidence in winning. He was already prepared to talk to Principal Chun and Uncle Jin at any time. Therefore, every sentence he said now was watertight. Every word he said was from the bottom of his heart. When he saw that Principal Chen's originally cold expression had eased, he knew that he had hit the nail on the head. He also understood that as long as he was considerate of Yi Qian, neither Principal Chun nor Uncle Jin would stand up to stop him from getting close to Yi Qian. With a heavy gaze, he calmly continued, Also, Yi Qian is too outstanding. In the future, she will definitely meet all kinds of outstanding men who will be attracted to her. I have to walk around her more in advance, so that she will be more picky when choosing a boyfriend in the future. He was just short of saying, who told her to be so picky that Xia Jinyuan is the most suitable boyfriend for her? Headmaster Chun, whose expression had softened a little, instantly darkened when he heard this. This Major Xia was really scheming. No matter how intelligent Miss Jian is, she may not be his opponent. She will definitely be at a disadvantage in front of him. No wonder when he was in Fujian town. As long as he was around, Miss Jian would definitely spar with him or be his sparring partner. So this was his plan. Even if Miss Jian wanted to find a boyfriend in the future, she could only look for him. Captain Xia, do you think you are suitable for Miss Jian? She is an intelligent but simple-minded girl. Do you think she will think you are the most suitable? Principal Chun was not an ordinary person. Thinking about Yi Qian's personality, he was able to pinpoint the crux of the problem. Xia Jinyuan did not immediately speak. His lips curled up into a smile. His elegant and handsome face was as calm as ever. He sat there casually, his deep eyes looking at the flames in the fireplace. His gaze and the fire intertwined and burst out with scorching heat. He raised his head and smiled at Principal Chun, who had a cold expression on his face. He slowly said, I don't know if she will like me, but Uncle Chun, what I can tell you is that I am definitely a man worthy of her. Moreover, I am a soldier who has fought for the glory of our country all my life. There's only one Xia Jinyuan like me in this world. That kind of Yi Qian, smart, patriotic, loyal. That's the kind of person she needs in life, Xia Jinyuan. In front of the elders, Xia Jinyuan had always been gentle and elegant, and rarely showed his strong side. But this time, Xia Jinyuan instantly showed his oppressive side. His eyes were smiling, but they were arrogant and awe-inspiring. His expression was calm, but it was extraordinary. Even if he was smiling, it made people feel that this man was really dangerous. Principal Chun, who felt a chill in his heart, narrowed his eyes. Then, he looked over with a deep and probing gaze. It was as if it was the first time he had seen this gentle and elegant young major in front of him. He wasn't refined at all. He was clearly a wolf with deep thoughts and extremely strong patience. The wolf had already made its move, but still depended on whether the prey would take the bait. Moreover, Miss Jian was a girl who did not like to be the prey. She was very ambitious. However, it was undeniable that there was only one Xia Jinyuan like him in this world. His ability was also very admirable. He usually took care of Miss Jian very carefully. Principal Chun, who seemed to have thought of something, moved his eyes slightly and revealed an unfathomable smile. Captain Xia, oh Captain Xia, you really don't show off. I have known you for more than a year, but this is the first time I know what the real Captain Xia is like. Chapter 307. I will not interfere with your relationship with Miss Jian. Just as Captain Xia said, Miss Jian is still young and should focus on her studies. She is not suitable for a relationship at all. She is an underage student. Even if Captain Xia is interested in her, he can only give up. It had to be said that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Xia Jinyuan could always inadvertently hit the nail on the head. Wasn't that right? Would a soldier dare to pursue an underage student? Commander-in-Chief Xia was the first person who would not let Xia Jinyuan off the hook. Xia Jinyuan's deep eyes revealed a trace of helplessness. He sighed and said, "So, I have to ask Yi Qian to raise her standards for finding a boyfriend in advance. This will effectively prevent her from being seduced by a little boy who has nothing while she is still in school. If she is more focused on her studies, you and Uncle will be more at ease." In the end, he just wanted to prevent Yi Qian from being seduced by other boys when he was not around. Principal Chen laughed and made the fire burn brighter. He said to Xia Jinyuan, "We have been out for more than 10 minutes. We will have to trouble Major Xia for the night." The conversation seemed to have ended just like that, but Xia Jinyuan knew that this conversation was just a test. "Uncle Chun, you are too polite. Yi Qian has never been a problem to me, and she will not be a problem to me." Xia Jinyuan stood up and bowed politely to the world-class sniper, who had immediately set up a small trap for him. "I won't disturb your rest. I will take good care of Yi Qian. Don't worry." Trouble? How could taking care of his little fox be trouble? He was more than happy to do so. He was definitely not afraid of trouble. Principal Chun had indeed set up a small trap for Major Xia. If he dared to show any signs of being afraid of trouble, then he would really have to trouble him to take care of Yi Qian for the night. Tomorrow, he could forget about taking care of Yi Qian. At night, as soon as Yi Qian moved slightly, Xia Jinyuan, who was guarding beside her, immediately opened his eyes. He patted her shoulder gently and used his gentleness to drive away Yi Qian's struggles in her dream. This was the second time she had killed someone. Yi Qian's dream was still a sea of blood. The roar echoed in her mind, and cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She was in a very restless sleep. She murmured something vaguely. Xia Jinyuan stood up and leaned close to her. He was shocked after hearing what she said. She murmured, "Captain Xia is right, Captain Xia is right." She repeated it over and over again, as if it would calm her down. "My little fox, you're also right. In front of the greater good, your choice is very normal." He patted her shoulder gently and whispered in her ear in a calm and gentle voice. He drove away her fear, drove away her nightmares, and returned her to peace. There was only one Xia Jinyuan in this world, and there was only one Yi Qian in this world. No matter who fell in love with who, all they saw was an evenly matched contest. The next day, Yi Qian woke up to the sound of bells ringing. It was the herdsmen driving their property, the yaks, into the mountains. The crisp sound of the bells seemed to come from ancient times, waking her up to the arrival of a new day. "You're awake?" She still had her eyes closed, unwilling to wake up from this tranquility. A low voice with a faint smile suddenly came into her ears. Yi Jian was so shocked that she opened her eyes abruptly and saw Major Xia with his upper body naked. Yi Qian didn't know if she should scream or fly into a rage out of humiliation. Her biggest reaction was to widen her dark eyes. She didn't know what to say or do. Chapter 308. In the past, when she worked in a security company, she often saw the special bodyguards training, and these special bodyguards were often topless. In the army in Fujian town, she often saw topless male soldiers training. Not only was she able to look straight ahead, but even if she did, she was very natural and not shy at all. However, when it came to Xia Jinyuan, there were always some things that were out of her control. What should she do to be more natural? What should she say to avoid embarrassment? It was rude to keep her eyes open, but if she closed them, wouldn't she be at a disadvantage? Moreover, she was still sleeping in the tent, so why was he changing while she was sleeping? Did he not consider that if she woke up, it would be awkward? In the end, it was Major Xia's bad taste again. Yi Qian, who had originally wanted to close her eyes, decided to open them instead. If he dared to take them off, how could she not dare to look? But this time, Yi Qian was overthinking things. Major Xia, who was pulling up his pants with both hands, wasn't familiar with Tibetan men's attire. When he saw Yi Qian wake up and stare at him with a confused expression, he raised his eyebrows slightly and explained, "I can only leave in 3 days. It's too obvious to wear a combat uniform, so it's better to wear a Tibetan attire." Oh, yes, it's better to wear a Tibetan attire. Me too. Yi Qian, who had lived 2 lifetimes, was in the same room as a topless man who was changing clothes. Although they were in a tent, but this was still a room. In the past, even if she saw a topless man, it was always a few of them, and she wasn't facing him alone. In terms of relationships, Yi Qian, who was as pure as a piece of white paper with a foreign man, replied awkwardly in a dry voice. Then she realized the problem wasn't that she dared to look at him even if he dared to take them off, but if she opened her eyes and didn't look away, it would be indecent to look. After she realized what was happening, she immediately closed her eyes in shock. "Xia Jinyuan, hurry up and put on your clothes. I'm still sleeping. Why are you changing?" These words were clearly meant to be humiliating, but just by listening to the literal meaning, there was something wrong with it. Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan's sexy thin lips curled into a perfect smile. He was originally standing in the middle of the room to change his clothes. When he walked over, he stopped right in front of Yi Qian. She could see his slender legs, his lower abdomen, his abs, and his strong chest. She could see his sexy body with her own eyes. Yi Qian looked up at Xia Jinyuan. His deep and mellow voice sounded doubtful. "Little fox, why do I feel that something is not quite right with your words? You're still sleeping, so why should I change? Are you saying that I can only change my clothes when you open your eyes?" She could already hear the hint of a smile in his voice as he said lazily, "I'm sorry. It's my fault. I should have changed when you were awake." "Nonsense. I didn't mean anything else. No, I didn't mean it that way at all." Yi Qian had closed her eyes tightly when he came closer. Now that she heard him spouting nonsense, she opened her eyes in embarrassment and anger. She looked up at the man who was looking down at her and said, "Don't misunderstand me on purpose." She even dared to open her eyes. She had improved a little. Although it was an accident that she woke up in the middle of changing her clothes in the tent, it was still a pleasant surprise. Chapter 309. He wanted to avoid her for a while, but when he saw her shy expression, he decided not to. In Fujian town, the little fox would spend her summer and winter holidays in the army. There were plenty of half-naked male soldiers training in the army. She spent her days in the army and had seen the upper bodies of countless male soldiers. The only one she had never seen was him. He was confident in his figure and wasn't afraid that it would be worse than the other male soldiers in the army. He had already taken it off, and it wasn't like he did it on purpose in front of her. It was fine to let her admire his figure. He had to let her know what a man's figure was. TSK, TSK, TSK. Sometimes he felt ashamed of his dark heart. In order to improve Little Fox's taste and mate selection, he was even using his looks in front of a 15-year-old girl. Commander-in-Chief Xia. "Oh, Commander-in-Chief Xia, I hope you won't get so angry that you'll have a heart attack when you find out." After Yi Qian finished speaking, she suddenly realized that Xia Jinyuan was standing too close to her, and she was still looking at him with her eyes wide open. Even when she hurriedly closed her eyes, her gaze still swept across his muscular chest. When she closed her eyes, her gaze fell on his sexy abs and his beautiful green pants. Yiqian closed her eyes tightly, and her heart trembled. She knew that her face was burning hot. She steadied her voice and said softly, "Xia Jinyuan, why are you standing in front of me? Even if you're wearing clothes, you should wear them far away from me. Also, don't misunderstand me." "Misunderstand? Little fox, are you saying that I misunderstood you?" "Sigh, sometimes you have too many meanings, and it's too hard to guess. So, I can only guess from your literal meaning." Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and took the Tibetan robe from the rack. "I'm not standing too close to you. That Tibetan girl put the Tibetan robe I wanted to wear on the rack beside you, so I had to come and get it. If I didn't come and get it, I would have been half naked, and you wouldn't have dared to open your eyes." She was really adorable. It was not like she had never seen a male soldier shirtless, yet she was still so shy. How did she get along with all the male soldiers in the army? Xia Jinyuan, who was laughing in his heart, took the clothes and lowered his head to look at Yiqian, who had her eyes tightly shut. He was so close that he could see her long and thick eyelashes clearly. When he saw that her face was abnormally red, he frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Why is your face so red?" As he spoke, he had already bent down. His right hand was holding the Tibetan robe, and his left hand was already reaching out. The back of his slightly cold hand gently pressed against her forehead, and his brows furrowed even tighter. "You're having a fever. Do you feel any other discomfort? What about the wound? Does it hurt? Do you feel any nausea, vomiting, or powerlessness?" He closed his eyes to hide the uneasiness in his heart. Yi Jian's body stiffened again, as she was not prepared for it. The hidden awkwardness and shyness instantly gushed out from her heart like spring water. At this moment, not only was her face burning hot, even her body was burning up. She subconsciously raised her hand, wanting to push his hand away from her face. Before she could raise her hand, he placed the Tibetan robe in his right hand to the side and quickly pressed down on her wrist. "Don't move. I just stitched up the wound. Do you want to split open again?" His voice was cold and deep. At this moment, half of his body was above Yi Qian's head. He had taken a shower with cold snow water before coming back to change his clothes. At this moment, not only did he have the refreshing scent of mint, but he also had the coldness of snow. Chapter 310. Wisps of it drifted to Yi Qian's nose and melted into her chest. Yi Qian realized that she couldn't breathe normally. Her hands were held down, and all she could breathe was his scent. Even her shoulders could feel his body temperature. She tried her best to calm herself down and said slowly, "I won't move. Please move away from me. Also, although the sun is out, the temperature is still very low. Major Xia, I suggest you put on your clothes to prevent catching a cold. You know that it's dangerous to catch a cold on a plateau in no man's land." As he spoke, Yi Qian felt herself gradually calming down. Soon, the temperature on her face dropped. "I'm fine. I don't have a fever. I'm just not used to you being so close to me. The wound is very good. You treated it very professionally last night. I can feel that the wound is not inflamed. There's no nausea, vomiting, or weakness. It's because you're too close to me." She explained it clearly. Only by explaining it clearly could she gradually calm down. When Xia Jinyuan felt the back of his hand on her face gradually cooling down, he looked at her again. Her eyes were closed, and the corners of her lips curved slightly. He naturally retracted his hand. For a man who always knew when to stop, he wouldn't anger his little fox so easily. Looking at her beautiful face, which was like a blooming hibiscus, he smiled casually and said, "I was too worried. I took a shower by the river just now. It wasn't convenient to change outside, so I had to go back to the tent. I wanted to quickly change while you were asleep, but who knew?" Before he could finish speaking, Yi Qian, who still hadn't opened her eyes, hurriedly interrupted, "I know. Captain Xia is a gentleman. He definitely didn't do it on purpose. He definitely didn't do it on purpose. Xia Jinyuan's character was absolutely guaranteed. It was just that, he always liked to show that vague ambiguity, which made her a little unable to handle it. Let her fight with him. It would be more satisfying. Xia Jinyuan, who had already been praised, slightly raised the corners of his mouth. His smile deepened. He was a gentleman. Towards others, he would definitely be a gentleman. However, towards his little fox, when she grew up, he would no longer be a gentleman. As a man, he had to take the initiative and never let the woman he fancied be snatched away by other wolves. Very good. It's good that you didn't misunderstand. Give me 3 minutes. The Tibetan robe is a little complicated. I need to fumble around before I can put it on. Xia Jinyuan took the Tibetan robe in his hand again and began to figure out how to put it on while trying to put it on. It had been more than a year since he came to the snowy highlands, and this was the first time he was wearing a Tibetan uniform. Unlike wearing the combat uniform, which could be done in 1 minute, this would take a little more time. When he was a few steps away, Yi Qian felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Elegant men always exuded calmness and confidence. That kind of Xia Jinyuan would always inadvertently make her heart pound. Stay away from dangerous men. You must stay away from them. Yi Qian felt that his breathing had become much smoother after he left. There was not enough oxygen in the highlands, so he felt much more relaxed. However, an even bigger problem had arisen. There were 3 exigencies in life. Earlier, when she was shocked by his naked upper body, she didn't think of the 3 exigencies. Now that she had calmed down, Yi Qian began to feel a little anxious. Are you done? Hurry up. This time, Yi Qian's little face was tense. His voice was a little hurried. 3 minutes have almost passed. Are you done yet? She was very anxious. She was in a hurry to release her bladder. Chapter 311. Xia Jinyuan, who had his back to her, did not notice her predicament. He was thinking about which piece of Tibetan clothing to wear first and which to wear later. The Tibetan girl was holding the lei rue that Tibetans usually wore, which was also commonly known as labor clothes. Little fox, I'm stumped by the clothes of my fellow Tibetans. I'm wearing a white shirt, but the left lapel is big and the right lapel is small. Come, help me see if this is how I should wear it. Xia Jinyuan turned around and tugged at the white shirt. I can't imagine how much time my fellow Tibetans spend on clothes every day. You have to give me some pointers. Otherwise, I can't guarantee how long I'll have to wear this in the tent. Just now, he and the others had taken a snow bath by the river. Now, he was changing his clothes alone in the tent and hadn't gone out yet. He didn't know what those guys were thinking under Han Zheng's intentional influence. When Yi Qian heard this, she had no choice but to open her eyes. When the scenery in front of her came into view, Yi Qian's heart skipped a beat. Even though she had already calmed down, her eyes still swayed. Xia Jinyuan, who was wearing a white silk brocade shirt that reached his waist, was several times sexier than before. The wide lapel of his shirt was open, revealing the beautiful texture of his chest. The white shirt was translucent, and it vaguely outlined the outline of his strong and narrow waist. When he breathed, his chest rose and fell slightly along with his sexy abs. One was moving and one was still and the other was moving. Yi Qian felt that the frequency of her breathing was rising and falling along with his abs. Put on the chuba, which is this cotton and woolen robe with wide sleeves. Put on. Yi Qian gently raised her finger and pointed. Her smooth and slender arm, which was as smooth as jade, glistened under the sunlight that penetrated the tent, as if it was covered in a layer of lustrous pearls. Xia Jinyuan's gaze gently slid over her bare arm. He thought to himself, it was indeed a good choice to cover her up last night. He had too much foresight. The little girl's skin, under the high-altitude ultraviolet rays, it was as tender as a peeled egg. It was so tender and tender that it was truly beautiful. Retracting his gaze, he began to put it on under her guidance. Then, tie that rainbow-colored ribbon around your waist. Yes, that's it. Chuba! Xia Jinyuan picked up a red, green, cyan, and purple long belt made of different colors and said with a smile, "This is beautiful." I used to think that I could bring one of these back after I went down the mountain. Art Peace, hurry up. Yi Qian wasn't in the mood to chat with him, so he urged, tie the chupa around your waist and tie the sleeves behind your waist. The drooping part of the long skirt is at your knees. Inside the tent, Yi Qian was instructing Xia Jinyuan on how to put on the Tibetan uniform. From the inside to the outside, he taught him which one to put on first and which one to put on later. Outside, Han Jing and the others, who had already put on their clothes, gritted their teeth and rubbed their fists as they waited for Q King, who didn't even know how to put on clothes, to come out. I don't believe that he doesn't even know how to put on clothes, J5 said with a smile, but no matter how one looked at it, his smile looked sinister. The four of us are already dressed, but he alone still needs a student to teach him. Isn't it embarrassing? The four of them had come to bid farewell to Xia Jinyuan. The matters in the village had already been settled. The herdsmen who had been killed had been brought to a forbidden area that only Tibetans could enter for a sky burial. They would immediately set off for the military station and report all the information they had. Chapter 312. This time, they discovered that the mercenaries weren't just mercenaries. The person who was killed by Yi Qian's sniper attack was an active duty soldier from another country. If they hadn't found the identification badge in the soles of his shoes during the body search, they wouldn't have known that the person who was killed was an active duty soldier. This was something that needed to be investigated. An active duty soldier from another country had appeared in China with a group of mercenaries and killed one of our soldiers. What did this country want to do, and what did they want? They needed to investigate further in secret. The Snowfield Brigade didn't need to worry about how to investigate and how the military would deal with it after the investigation. Early in the morning, they showered together and went back to the tent to change. The four of them had finished packing, but the Soldier King was still putting on his clothes. What was he trying to do by dressing so slowly? The sound of teeth grinding outside was like that of wolves grinding their fangs, occasionally accompanied by the sound of hua hua. Xia Jinyuan, who had finally put on his Tibetan clothes, didn't wait for Yi Qian to admire him and said in a low voice, "I'll go out for a while. The others are outside." Yi Qian couldn't wait for him to go out quickly. When he heard this, he immediately urged him, "Go, go. They must have something to tell you." At this moment, Yi Qian didn't even think about what kind of psychological experience the Snowfield Brigade soldiers outside went through when she taught Xia Jinyuan how to put on his Tibetan clothes. After Xia Jinyuan went out, Yi Qian, whose bladder was about to reach its limit, gently turned his body so that his injured waist was facing up. Then, he supported himself with one hand on the bed and slowly got up. After supporting himself, he slowly placed one foot on the ground and stood up very slowly. The whole process seemed to be in slow motion until he stood up completely. After sleeping on his stomach for the entire night, Yi Qian stood up and let out a long, comfortable sigh. She didn't dare to delay at all because she was now the one who was topless. It didn't matter if a man was half naked, but a girl was definitely not. In particular, Yi Qian had already developed. Although she was still young, her curves were already exquisite. The two balls were white and tender, just like a pair of cute little bunnies. Even though there was a bandage around their waists, they were still so slender that they could barely be held. Unable to put on any clothes, Yi Qian took out a large ethnic shawl from his bag that he had bought from an old man in the Tibetan area. It covered him from his shoulders to his hips. Once his upper body was fully covered, he slowly squeezed his feet into his shoes and moved out in small steps. As soon as she walked out of the tent, she saw four soldiers standing in a row about 30 meters away. They were dressed in combat uniforms and deep combat boots. Both their aura and height were the same. When Yi Jian looked over, the first person she saw was Xia Jinyuan, who was wearing a gorgeous Tibetan uniform. He looked handsome and masculine in his masculine appearance. Even without his military uniform, he was still the center of attention. "I will return to the army in 3 days. The four of you should be careful on your way back. Uncle Chun has borrowed some yaks from the herders. After you get out of this no-man's land, release the yaks on the grassland. Someone will bring them back to the village. In front of his comrades, Xia Jinyuan had a cold expression on his face. After he finished giving instructions, he saw Han Jing pouting at him and laughing. Your little fox came out to take a look at us. Where's she going? TSK, TSK, TSK. She was indeed a little fox. She even managed to tame Xia Jinyuan, the wolf. However, she was indeed a little girl who was worth waiting for. In her simple world, she could clearly distinguish between good and evil. Chapter 3:13. While Han Jing reminded Xia Jinyuan, he also reminded the rest of his comrades. They all looked towards the tent. They saw a slender figure wearing a skirt and a shawl moving forward with small steps. Although it was slow, she didn't stop at a single step and kept walking forward. Just like this young lady, she didn't admit defeat and didn't give up easily. No matter how difficult it was, as long as she could persevere, she would definitely persevere. Q King, you have good taste. J5 retracted his gaze and gave him a thumbs up. This young lady is very outstanding. It's just that she's still a little young. If you really want to do something, you'll have to wait. He used to be an instructor. Even though he was now a frontline Special Forces soldier, he still couldn't change some habits, such as constantly reminding his comrades to remember military rules and military discipline. The young lady was indeed admirable. When facing the enemy, she was really an outstanding soldier. She could fight side by side with them, and they could trust her with their backs. Therefore, it was completely understandable that Q King and young Master Xiao wanted to make her his. After being reminded by his comrade, Xia Jinyuan turned around and looked behind him. He saw that the person who covered himself up was moving slowly step by step towards the shadowy direction. Over there was... Xia Jinyuan's pursed lips curved slightly. Over there was the direction where the Tibetans went to relieve themselves. No wonder she kept urging him to hurry up. It turned out that there were 3 urgent needs in life. The most dangerous time had passed. Now that she could move step by herself, it was obvious that her wound had recovered well. Walking slowly was actually more beneficial for the recovery of her wound. The man who was still cold just now instantly smiled and said to the 4 of them, I'm fine here. I'll return to the army on time in 3 days. Q King, can you please give your comrade a little bit of a spring breeze drizzle? The class difference is obvious. I'm going to protest. Han Jing saw and felt depressed. What a big difference, and such an obvious one at that. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows. His sexy thin lips curved into a smile like a spring breeze drizzle. Why don't I smile like this when the girl you like comes next time? There was a deep meaning behind it. The 4 of them were all smart people. They instantly understood what it meant to be an all-round soldier king. Even K7 gave him a thumbs up and said, awesome. As expected of the all-round soldier king, this kind of deep battle is indeed deep enough. In the future, whenever we meet a girl that our comrades like, we'll put on a black face the whole time to set off our comrades' spring breeze drizzle. Han Jing was very smart. He immediately understood what it meant to prepare for a rainy day. He also guessed what Xia Jinyuan meant. Xia Jinyuan's dark eyes had a slight flicker of light. He chuckled. Brother, there are some meanings that can only be understood but not explained in words. Do you understand? They were all smart people. As long as they understood it in their hearts, there was no need to say too much. Sometimes it'll lose the fun if I say it out loud. Thank you for your advice. J5 bowed and said with a pained expression, only now did I King understand why I've been single all this time. It wasn't that the hardware wasn't good enough, but that the external environment hadn't been improved. If I had Q King by my side, I'm afraid my wife and children would already be on the bed. Q King, I'll leave my marriage to you in the future. Also, help me ask around and see if Yi Qian has a girl who's the same type as her. I'll book her in advance. Chapter 3:14. G3 kicked him in return. There's a first come, first served rule for everything. You back off. My life's most important event has yet to be resolved. You go away. After coldly scolding J5, he said to Xia Jinyuan in a pleasant manner, Q King, I'm counting on you too. When my child is born, he will acknowledge you as his godfather. Count me in. It was rare for K7 to join in the fun. His thin but handsome face was absolutely serious. I also need to resolve my life's most important event. One after another, Xia Jinyuan smiled elegantly. The revolution has yet to succeed. We still need to work hard. Once I succeed, it'll naturally be easier for us to settle down. The four of them nodded solemnly, indicating that they would support the all-round soldier king in all aspects. At the same time, they also made a long agreement with a wolf that was good at attacking people's hearts. They would fight in all aspects and set up an inescapable net just to lock down one fox. Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He just didn't know how little fox would react when she found out. However, no matter what kind of reaction she had, he would deal with it accordingly. Waving his hand, Xia Jinyuan bid farewell to his comrades and hurried towards Yi Qian's direction. He didn't rush over rashly as he was afraid of alarming Yi Qian. Instead, he found Yang Jin and asked for her help. Yang Jin was making yogurt. After hearing his request, she tilted her head and looked at the handsome soldier with a high-nose bridge and wearing a lotus-embroidered Tibetan uniform embroidered with peace and blessings. She smiled. You look very masculine in your Tibetan uniform. You look like a man from the grasslands. Thank you. Xia Jinyuan smiled. He realized that the girls who could talk to Little Fox were all straightforward girls. I'm worried that she won't be able to handle it herself. Please look after her for me. Standing below, Xia Jinyuan waited quietly. Yi Qian was so embarrassed by Yang Jin's gestures that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. Why does he know everything? Since he already knew, what else did she have to hide? When she came back, she saw him standing in front of her, waiting for her to go over. Yi Qian groaned in pain. Why was she so embarrassed every time she saw him? However, as soon as Yang Jin heard her cry out in pain, the kind-hearted Tibetan girl was so scared that she thought something had happened. She raised her voice and shouted. The Tibetans living on the plateau not only had a strong lung capacity, but they also had a golden voice. Xia Jinyuan could hear Yang Jin telling him to hurry over from afar. Yi Jian, who had yet to understand what was going on and had yet to recover from the awkward pain, saw a tall and straight man running toward her. His figure was vigorous like a swimming dragon, and his footsteps were steady as if he was flying. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of him. Did the wound split open again? Don't move. I'll carry you back. He sprinted over without even catching his breath. As soon as he finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Yi Qian. With his broad back facing her, he said in a deep voice, Come up. Let's go back to the tent and take a look. Yang Jin also thought that Yi Qian's wound had opened, so she immediately helped her up. She carefully sent Yi Qian onto Xia Jinyuan's back. Stay close to me. Don't put any weight on your waist. Wrap your arms around my shoulders, and don't place your center of gravity on your hips. Xia Jinyuan waited for her to stick close to his back and calmly instructed her. Then, he slowly and gently got up. He was worried that Yi Qian would lose her center of gravity, so he intentionally leaned his body forward so that her entire center of gravity could be on him. His hands were not supporting Yi Qian's hips, but rather, they were holding Yi Qian's thighs in a gentlemanly manner. Chapter 315. To understand a person, he had to use his attentiveness to resolve her awkwardness and make her relax in front of him. Xia Jinyuan had no experience in love, but he understood Yi Qian and knew how to get close to her heart. Yi Jian was not a bashful person. She had already carried him on her back. If she was going to come down for no reason, she might as well thank him. She pursed her lips and said softly, I was fine just now. Yang Jin misunderstood me. You don't have to worry too much. I always know how to take care of myself. In a situation where there is no one to take care of you, you can only take care of yourself. But now, I am here to take care of you. You don't have to feel burdened. Take care of yourself, and I can rest assured. Her words made Xia Jinyuan sigh softly. His love for her grew even stronger. His heart ached for this little fox. She really made his heart ache. She had been strong for so long that she had forgotten that she could rely on others. His words made Yi Qian fall silent. She had always been used to taking care of herself and knew how to take care of herself. She knew that there was no one else in her life that she could rely on other than herself. But she could not refute Xia Jinyuan's words. He had good intentions, so he should not be treated like a needle. Yang Jin saw that there was nothing else for her to do, so she said something to Xia Jinyuan and skipped away happily. The gunfight last night did not leave a shadow in this warm and generous Tibetan girl's heart. He carried her on his back all the way, avoiding sharp rocks. His steps were steady without any bumps. His back was like a mountain. He used all his strength to give Yi Jian support, but at the same time, he embraced her like the sea. Yi Qian's face was gently pressed against his back. When she felt his body temperature, her expression was a little unclear. She thought that Xia Jinyuan was special in her heart. He was so special and so dangerous. She wanted to run away as far as she could. She did not need kinship or love. What she needed was to be strong and brave. She needed to rely on her own efforts to stand high and far away. She needed to crush those who had bullied her with her own hands so that they would never have the chance to bully her, and humiliate her in this life. Yi Qian was a girl with a firm mind. She had even gone through a death tribulation, so she was able to maintain her original heart. Even if she had wavered before, she was able to quickly correct her mindset. When she returned to the tent, Xia Jinyuan did not ask her why she went out just now, nor did he mention that she could tell him in advance if she needed to go to the emergency room the next time. He knew very well that these words of concern would only embarrass Yi Qian even more if he said them out loud. Occasionally pretending not to know was also a way to protect the other party's dignity. Slow down. Don't use too much strength. Xia Jinyuan gently squatted down until Yi Qian's feet could touch the ground naturally. He used his strong waist to support her body weight, then slowly let go. I'll let go now. Stand up slowly, don't rush. Yi Qian wanted to recover as soon as possible, so she did not dare to be too careless. As she stood up slowly, her hands had to keep the shawl from slipping down. When she lowered her head to cover it, Xia Jinyuan's helpless voice came clearly from above her head. Don't cover it. I'll close my eyes. I want to take a second look. Yi Qian's heart skipped a beat, but because of his words, her hands tightened around the shawl. Chapter 316. After that, Yi Qian felt that she had overreacted. Fortunately, Xia Jinyuan closed his eyes in a gentlemanly manner and did not notice her overreaction. After exhaling softly, Yi Jian said, "Please forgive me. I'm a little unnatural, and I'm not used to being taken care of by others. That's why I sometimes overreact. Please forgive me, Captain Xia." Yi Qian felt that it would be easier for her to talk about her discomfort, and that it would be easier for her to face him. Moreover, she didn't think that her abnormal behavior could be hidden from Xia Jinyuan's eagle-like eyes. He saw it clearly. That was why she chose to close her eyes and choose not to ask to resolve the awkwardness. Instead of pretending, she might as well tell him clearly and let him know that she was such a person. You are indeed a little fox. After opening his eyes, Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and flicked her forehead with his slender finger. I know you're not used to it. I believe you can see it too. I'm trying to get you used to it. It was natural that she was not used to it, so he needed to work very hard in this short period of time to leave an impression on her, so that when she calmed down, he would appear in her mind. Comrades in arms help and assist each other. When you are injured, I will take care of you. This is not a process that you need to get used to, but a process that you must accept. In the future, you will not only take care of yourself on the battlefield, but also take care of the brothers who are fighting side by side with you. Remember, little fox, you are not alone. I, Dad, and Uncle Chun are all people that you can rely on. Yi Qian lowered her head and looked at her toes. After he finished speaking, she slowly said, Grandpa Jin and Uncle Chun are indeed family members that I can rely on. As for Captain Xia, she raised her head again, and a sly look flashed across her starry eyes. She smiled and said, As for you, Captain Xia, I am not one for the time being. One day, When I put on a military uniform and become a real soldier, I will think that we are comrades who can rely on each other and help each other. Right now, we can only be considered as soldiers and civilians. Against Xia Jinyuan, she had no choice but to stall for time. It would take at least 3 years for her to wear a military uniform. 3 years, a few hundred days and nights, was enough to change many people and many things, including forgetting. The meaning behind her words made Xia Jinyuan fall silent for 3 seconds. Then, his thin lips curled up, and his elegant and handsome face was as calm as the wind and clouds. Now, you're just short of a military uniform. You've worked with us 3 times, right? Not only do I think of you as our comrade in arms, even Han Jing and the others unanimously think of you as our comrade in arms. In our hearts, those who have fought side by side are comrades that we can rely on. All right, my little comrade, I need to check your wounds. Now, please be obedient and lie down gently. Uncle Chun, oh, Uncle Chun, now I understand why you had that mysterious smile on your face before you left last night. The person who stopped him from being with the little fox was not Uncle Chun or Uncle Jin, but the little fox herself. She had always wanted to cut ties with him, and even said that they could only be comrades after she put on a military uniform. It would take at least 3 years for her to wear a military uniform. 3 years, a few hundred days and nights. She was thinking that as time passed, their relationship would fade. Chapter 3:17. Little Fox, oh Fox, you're so smart. I really have to deal with you at any time. Yi Qian knew that he had seen through her. She pursed her lips and sighed softly in her heart. She really wanted to ask, Xia Jinyuan, what's going on in your heart? Look at him now. Who knows what he's thinking? Comradeship deal. Since he said they were comrades in arms, then they were comrades in arms. It was exactly what she wanted. Comradeship was the relationship she wanted the most. Next time, if he dared to do anything ambiguous or say anything ambiguous, she would just solve it with violence. Outside, Principal Chun had his hands behind his back and was whistling a Tibetan song. He had a cold smile on his face as he walked towards the yak herd. Captain Xia, oh, Captain Xia, no matter how fierce a wolf is, it has to tighten its claws when it comes to someone who can make it soft. What's more, Miss Jin isn't a prey that's easy to hunt down. She's smart. With Xia Jinyuan around, Yi Qian didn't have to rely on anyone else. The first day, after checking her wound and changing her bandages, he taught her how to speak Tibetan and occasionally mentioned some interesting things that happened in the army. During the winter break of my 2nd year at the military academy, I was sent to the army. The place was even more remote than Fujian town. The soldiers in the army only received 1 letter from home every 1 or 2 months. On the 15th day I was there, there was a letter from the army. A squad leader took the letters from a few classes to the field and told me, and a few other classes, that if they thought it was from their girlfriends, they should do 50 push-ups. When the recruits heard this, they all rushed to do push-ups. I didn't do it at the time. There were about 10 people doing it together. The squad leader had 4 letters in total, so only 4 people had letters. If the others didn't have letters, wouldn't they be doing it for nothing? Yi Qian listened to these interesting stories with great interest. Seeing him stop, he smiled and said, "Why don't you do it? What if it's from your girlfriend?" It was normal for such an outstanding and eloquent Captain Xia to have a girlfriend in school. Of course I won't do it. If I don't have a girlfriend, it would be for nothing. After 50 were done, the class leader asked the recruits to come up and pick up the letters. He asked each recruit, "Is she your girlfriend?" 2 of the recruits answered yes. The squad leader put on a fake smile and said, "Since it's such an important letter, then make a few more." After he finished speaking, he asked the other recruits how many would be suitable. Under normal circumstances, it should not be less than 200. Later, we heard that the class leader didn't have a girlfriend, so he felt unbalanced. Yi Qian was laughing so hard that her shoulder blades were slightly undulating, and her slender waist was trembling slightly. Xia Jinyuan, who was lowering his head to change the sterile gauze on her, couldn't help but laugh. "Is it that funny? Then I'll have you to laugh at." Fearing that she would laugh too much and open up the wound that had already begun to heal, he raised his head and reminded her. Just as he raised his gaze slightly, his deep black eyes instantly darkened. In front of him, her slightly undulating back glowed like a pearl under the sunlight. Her undulating lines were perfect and graceful. It was a gentle beauty that no words could describe. Her shoulder blades, which looked like they were about to spread out and take flight, gently trembled. He could faintly see the little white bunny in front of her chest as she crawled. It was also gently trembling with her laughter. He inadvertently raised his head and discovered her beauty. Suddenly, it fiercely crashed into his heart. From then on, it left the deepest, most beautiful, and most gentle memory in his heart. Chapter 3:18. This kind of inadvertent beauty was often the most direct and most memorable. Xia Jinyuan almost panicked and shifted his gaze away from her beautiful back. When he lowered his head, his sexy Adam's apple bobbed up and down slightly. He steadied his breathing and said, "Don't laugh so hard. Your wounds are starting to heal. You can't open them again." If this went on, he felt that he would become more and more of a beast. But when it came to matters in the army, Yi Qian was completely open. Her eyebrows curved like crescent moons as she laughed and said, "I realize that every big shot in the army is evil. Wasn't I in the army during the winter break last year? When a recruit joined the army, the regiment commander went to the capital for a meeting. When he came back, he was wearing casual clothes. When it was time for dinner, the regiment commander went to the cafeteria to get a green onion and prepared to dip it in sauce. Uncle Tongjin and I were making dumplings in the cafeteria when a recruit from Sichuan sneaked in and bumped into the regiment commander with a green onion in his hand. The recruit whispered to the regiment commander, 'Sir, do me a favor. Bring me a cigarette when you deliver the food tomorrow. Just one cigarette to relieve my boredom.' The regiment commander was afraid that I would say something, so he gestured to me with his hands behind his back, indicating that I should just watch from the side. He pretended to ask questions and clearly asked which platoon, squad, and class the recruit was from. As you can imagine, the platoon leader, captain, and squad leader led a group of recruits out to run with weights the entire night. Before the regiment commander gave the order, he only said, 'I know you guys are too bored, so I'll relieve your boredom.' After running with weights, the regiment commander, who had slept the entire night, stood at the entrance of the camp and waited for the platoon leader, captain, and squad leader to return with the recruits. When he saw them, the regiment commander smiled and said, 'I'm just a delivery man, so I still have the authority to control you recruits.' Until now, the platoon leader and the others still don't know which insensible recruit treated the regiment commander as a delivery man. I didn't say anything either, I just secretly laughed behind their backs. When it came to matters in the army, Yi Qian's entire demeanor changed. Like the rising sun, he was full of vitality. She spoke happily, but she didn't realize that she was like the most beautiful painting, slowly spreading out in front of Xia Jinyuan. His body, his heart, and his eyes could only see her beauty. After going through so much, she was the one he was looking for. The sterile gauze was gently covered. Xia Jinyuan looked up slightly and stared deeply at it. He lowered his head, closed his eyes sincerely, and kissed the gauze gently with his warm lips. It was an extremely light kiss, like a feather brushing past, but only caused ripples in his heart. It did not startle Yi Qian in the slightest. "Are you done?" "Captain Xia." Yi Qian didn't move when he felt Yi Qian put on the gauze. He was caught off guard and asked with a smile, "You don't have any more bandages? Why don't we just use tape? It should work too." "No, I'm thinking about whether I should tie a beautiful knot on the gauze," Xia Jinyuan replied calmly and asked very seriously, "What do you think?" Yi Qian pursed his lips and smiled. "No matter how beautiful the knot is, I won't be able to see it, so there's no need for that." She didn't know that he kissed her. Even though there was a layer of gauze between them, for Xia Jinyuan, this was the first time he had intimate contact with Yi Qian. After he kissed her, Major Xia sadly realized that it wasn't him who left a good impression in front of Yuchien. His little fox didn't do anything. In the end, she didn't stay by his side that night and started thinking about it before she even fell asleep. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.